Well, hello. Today in the studio, I am joined by Mr. Daniel Sharp. Now, Sharpie, as I more affectionately know him, and I'm sure any of you have met him would probably know him by the same name, he has started a tradition today that I think should be upheld, where he has brought one of his favourite Japanese whiskies in, and you might not be able to see if you're just listening to this today, but I have a beautiful Japanese whiskey in my hand. Sharpie, most importantly, do you want to tell me about what we're enjoying here today?
It's a 15-year Japanese whiskey, a Shinobu whiskey, and it was actually gifted to me by a good friend, Isaac. Thank you very much. I just bought a new townhouse as sort of a housewarming gift. So I've started, again, through another friend getting into my whiskies more and more recently, Manu, and I've got a very, very small collection at home at the moment. But I think this is the pick of the bunch at the moment. So I had to bring the best for the best.
Mate, it's pretty special. That's what I said. I've got the cooking wine hiding in the decanter here. No, I've got the Dalwhinnie stashed over here behind us just in case we're thirsty. But this is the Japanese whiskies are just special, aren't they?
They seem to know what they're doing in a lot of aspects of life, I find.
Mate, they have got it. I mean, they know how to build good cars, and then they also know how to make a bloody good whiskey.
That's right. Just for the cars that they failed on, you've got the whiskey to back it up.
Absolutely, mate. It fills the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can then not worry about those too much. Now, Shabby, I'm really excited to have you on today because, mate, you do wild stuff these days. But I've known you and known of you for a very long time. And it goes back to one of the fun places that we go on this podcast, back to Boostcruising.
The proving grounds.
Mate, the proving grounds. And this is the best part because we were all younger blokes in the early 00s. And that was a glorious time for the car scene because it found a place to come together on the internet.
Yep.
And Boost was obviously one of those big places. And I remember you as a bit of a king of the road as well at that time because you were part of a group called Club High Rollers.
That did enter the realm for quite some time. I'm still friends with a lot of those guys as well. When I got into the car scene, I still lived on the Sunshine Coast. So that's where I grew up. Born in Brizzy, moved up the Sunshine Coast as a young fella. But when I got into cars and everything like that, Sunshine Coast is where I lived. So when I found out about Boostcruising in probably 2004, I think it was, maybe even very early 05, because I graduated year 12, 04. So I was getting into cars around that sort of high school time. Street cars and stuff like that. It was a really great place to... Sunshine Coast is a small place. So you had your group of friends up there and your little car club. But then Brisbane was a different world. Like the Big Smoke was a different place. So to be able to sort of close that gap and see what was going on and what the real guys were doing and stuff like that, it sort of opened it up. And I mean, when I started learning about it and getting involved, I only had my first car still, which was a 1987 Toyota Camry.
Oh, what a weapon.
Absolute gorgeous. But it sort of evolved from there. And as you said, like so many of you guests so far, that's where we have met. That's where we've sort of gotten to know each other.
It's been hilarious, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the number of friends and mutual friends that have all come out of this one world. Yep. Of car scene. And you've got to tell me, so up on the Sunny Coast, where Sunny Coast is a pretty broad stretch, whereabouts specifically?
So I grew up in Marcoola Beach, about 300 metres from the beach, but when I got into cars and stuff like that, I was living went from Marcoola Beach to Mooloolaba when I turned 18, which is nice because
Mate, the lapping scene was robust.
It was awesome. That's where we were living at Mooloolaba when I bought my first, I'm going to inverted commas here, fast car, performance cars, the Nissan Silvia.
CA18?
No. Don't swear at me like that. SR20 from the start. Yeah, forged boy. SR20.
Choice. Out of the blocks hard after the Camry.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, and then sort of Mooloolaba, blah, blah sort of area for the length of time that I was up there. And
then what sort of got you down this way? Was it work? Was it study? Was it what pulled you?
I was up there for quite some time. I came down for briefly after school for uni for 6 months, and then it wasn't for me, so I moved back up the coast. I've done a sort of backs and forwards. Communications for 6 months. Yeah. I wouldn't say I've got a qualification, but ironically, it's a lot of the industry that I'm involved in now.
Well, which is hilarious. And this is what I'm enjoying. What about it did you not like at the time?
I think at the time it It was the whole straight out of school thing, straight into uni, and I just moved to Brisbane from the Sunshine Coast. I had no mates in Brisbane. This is before the car stuff.
So it was
all
just
my mates on the coast.
pump the brakes.
I think so. I just needed to reset, so I came back and.
Did you enjoy the study though? Was that?
Yeah. The study was no issue. Like I passed everything, and it was all fine. But I think at the time I was like, look, I'm actually just going to take a year, so I deferred it, and then never went back.
Solid.
So
Good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, mate, you saved yourself a fortune.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, did that. Moved back to the coast. So I was up in the coast until I was probably let's call it mid-20s. Don't lock me into any truth in the story, but moved to Brisbane. Worked for Department of Transport for a little bit, and then from there I got made redundant with the whole government redundancies that happened at that time.
Fantastic.
Then worked for News Limited for sort of a year.
Really?
And then
what'd you do for them?
Designing classifieds ads for the newspapers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Got to
fantastic.
speak to famous football players' mums and set all the adult ads that they called up. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have to ring the numbers and check?
No, we didn't. Could have been a good side business.
Yeah, it would have been funny.
Could have figured that out.
Yeah, extra ad space.
Exactly. And then from there, just sort of, I'm sure we'll get into this throughout the chat, but at that time I was living with Matyas, who you've had on
Of all
the
the
show.
people.
Absolutely. And through the culmination of that, I sort of picked up automotive photography, and a group of us went on a trip to Vietnam the year before, but this one was a trip to the Philippines where we hired motorbikes and rode the country. And I came back and I was just like, I picked up a couple of photography clients ongoing from there, and I was shooting for magazines and stuff. And
Because you fell into that pretty hard, didn't you? Because the photography stuff, do you remember broadly when that might have been? Was that late 00s? Or
it was. So I moved in with Matyas as so I moved to Brisbane, lived with a mate Drew, and then moved in with the old man for a little bit, and then moved in with Matyas. And another guy called Chris Facius, was an automotive and wedding photographer at the time, but is now fashion dedicated.
So you were living in a household of photographers.
Exactly.
And is that what prompted it? Was the boys were all shooting?
It's just like a cooking pot, right?
Yeah.
So they're all shooting. And I got into, I'd had a camera with me for quite some time, just to track my hobbies, document history as it were, for my own personal, memories and whatnot, keepsakes. But living with people like that, you start to pick up what they're doing, you're learning things, you're developing. And it got to the point where I'd actually picked up some clients of my own. I registered the business Sharp Imagery in 2012. So, and then from there, I just had little clients here and there. But it sort of evolved, and with networking and how realistically small the car community is, you got moving into shooting for Fast Fours, Hot Fours, HPI, Zoom, all those sort of stuff. And so I got into shooting a lot of the high-end cars as well. So in terms of supercar stuff, so the super private cars collections, the Curie 25 Supercar Club, when that was around, I'd shoot all their nights, stuff like that. So it evolved, it snowballed pretty quick, and it was sort of like bite off as much as you can chew and just chew really fast. So that's the brief introduction is sort of where I got started in terms of photography.
And that's certainly what I remember. I remember just seeing beautiful photos that you were taking. So beautiful locations, well composed, and you could see the level of effort in that, because for anyone that doesn't understand what it takes to take a pro-level photo and how to work a DSLR, as fun as it is to point and shoot and say the camera does a good job, there's a surprising amount that goes into it from the individual.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I would be lying if I didn't say that I started like a lot do with the high levels of clarity, dial back the highlights a bit, but you're living in a house of photographers, you shouldn't get corrected.
Oh, mate, when you're
quite
pumping
quickly.
that clarity slider and they're like, whoa, Tiger, settle down.
Back it up.
It's very tempting, because you're like, but it just makes it pop, and you're like,
Yeah, no, there's other ways to make it work. And it was funny because that household, we had a few, James Dean lived there for a period of time as well,
house.
who also is a photographer, well, now wedding videographer, but at the time also automotive, clubs, all that sort of stuff. So that house, as I said, was just it's like I'm not going to say influencer house, but like it was like one of those places where everyone was doing the same sort of thing and
it was
creative. It was a creative sort of
creative hub before
place,
they were, you guys were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, exactly,
So-
exactly.
Yeah, that's a hell of a cohort to come out of that house when you think about how far all those fellas have gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, watching, like sitting next to Matyas, we all had like our computers on our desks in our bedrooms and stuff like that. And, I'd go down and watch Matyas editing like the latest Downshift feature shoot or a wedding shoot or something like that. And like I knew how to achieve the result of a lot of the things that he was doing, but the path to get there, like I'd be watching and he'd be like, click, click, click. I was like, stop. He's like, what? I said, how did you do that so fast? And he's like, you just click this and do this. I was like, you're joking me.
Yeah.
For the last 2 months, I've been doing this whole thing and like starting and this is when I'm first starting, right? But, talking to Matyas and both James as well and learning non-destructive editing, starting to incorporate layers into your stuff so that if you're like 15 steps down the track, you don't have to undo everything that you've done to correct this one thing that you've like just, as I said, living in those sort of places, you bounce off each other and you learn a lot of things. Helps you develop a lot faster than I think if you're just trying to nut it all out on your own.
Mate, that was the postgraduate degree that you did right there, wasn't
100%. Yeah.
I didn't realise that, but yeah, having all the fellas in there, so shooting, and so you'd be going along to shoots together, I guess, when it lined up, and then also post-producing under the same roof.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wild.
Yep.
Like, what a way to learn.
It's awesome.
Like, no wonder your stuff looks so rock star out of the gates.
Well, it's one of those things, right?
So I'm like, where's the learning curve here, Chief?
I'm a big, like I said, we got into cars early, and you remember the 2000s turbo curves of the big guys? Like that's sort of how I felt with photography, where it was just like nothing. Where it went. So, it was a lot fast, but you had to, like, because I hated what I was doing in terms of like a real job back then.
Yeah.
It was just like there was no one wanted to improve anything or find more efficient ways to do anything, and I was just like, well, I'm not just going to sit here and get stuck in this rut. And that's what it felt like. So to sort of jump ship and launch your own thing, you had to move fast, otherwise sink or swim. So, and I'm sure as a business owner, you're very, very familiar with that.
Oh, yeah, mate. Swim like hell.
Exactly.
Fuck. So you've jumped into that. Was it your full-time gig out of the gates, or were you still doing a few other things? You just went full
So
send?
when I got made redundant with government, I went part-time with News Limited is the job that I got there. So I was doing probably 3 or 4 days a week there.
And then that gave you the capacity
To build it a little bit. And then after 12 months, I was like, this isn't for me, as in the new stuff. And went full-time into my own thing.
Yeah, wow. And what sort of stuff were you picking up? Like, what sort of work?
All at the start, it would have been all automotive and a few events. So, as I said, a lot of it started off with you're networking throughout your being a part of the automotive scene. You know everyone, and networking through everything that you're doing and meeting people and being open to new experiences and opportunities. You had to jump into those sort of
and
things.
that brought up some big ones for you. And before we get too far ahead, because I obviously know a few parts of this story, I really want to back up. I want to go all the way back. So it's Mooloolaba.
Yep.
It's what, 2005?
Yep.
2005, and you got your
2005. Yep.
and it was absolutely not a CA18.
Absolutely not.
And was it an S13 Sylvia?
S13
or was this,
Sylvia.
Is this the one that we all know and love? Is this the gold one, or was this something before?
The one before. So I had a white S13. It was the original SR Jet. For those
was the
listening at home.
original
So
SR
that's
Jet.
in saying that, it was 170 kilowatts of fury. So I remember going to a
What's
power,
that in the old money?
240 horsepower.
That's still pretty good horsepower for a...
In 2005, it was not bad.
Mate, that was actually pretty strong. If you had 300 or 400, this is again back when 500 was getting
Massive.
very serious.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't push an SR to 400 horsepower back then.
It was very, very rare.
Yeah. That would cost you 50 grand.
And very unreliable. Because like
Terribly.
E85 wasn't a thing.
No.
Like you had to run 98 or like your Toiline or your C16.
Yeah.
Or
And your computer control wasn't there. It wasn't like your Haltex and stuff that
I
you got
didn't
now.
even have one.
No.
I had...
What is it, mate? Rising rate fuel regulator and these sort of things.
no, I mean, for that thing, I had an intercooler, an exhaust. It had when I bought it, it had the built motor ready to do everything. But like I was pretty poor back then. I didn't have the money, behind me that we do, as old men. But, back then also it didn't cost what things cost today.
No.
So
Bit cheaper.
But yeah, so the F13 was the first one. Had a full exhaust, intercooler, a T-piece boost controller, and and a high pressure fuel pump, 500 horsepower Warbro, and just wound it up, and it made all the power that it needed to do until my fault, blew it up at the tracks.
Whoops.
I did the old I must have done top of third gear, which is about 140. Went to go to fourth, but accidentally down into the left, and threw it back into second about 140, and everything exploded. So that was a learning curve for a young Dan, 19, 20-year-old Dan, just trying to have a bit of fun.
That is a spicy lesson.
It was a very spicy lesson. So that's where I got into like the performance side of cars. So it was like my first import. If you want to go back even further, I mean, I've been into cars, into automotive things my entire life. So when I was little, Speedway is what I grew up around. So my grandfather owned a couple of Formula 250, 260 speed cars. My uncle raced. My mum raced.
Really?
Which was super good. Yeah. She still got a big trophy at home, which was very, very cool.
That's awesome.
It was in the early 90s. And eventually my cousin, Josh, who's 3 years older than me, had a play as well. And just as I was sort of getting into the realm of being old enough, it's sort of when they all sort of gave it up, and
you're like, come on.
Just in time.
Because they're like, he's going to want to do this. Quick, tap out.
But yeah, that's what I grew up around, was Speedway. So they were all my fondest sort of Archerfield memories, which now, very recently, no longer exists.
Mate, the end.
It was the end. So I went to the last one of that in solidarity, but that was where I sort of grew up. My grandpa was a career mechanic. And then when I got into cars, as much as he wasn't super stoked when I turned up the first time in this loud Japanese thing, he definitely was the man that sort of helped point me in the right direction with doing work on my own cars and maintenance and all that sort of stuff. So it was fantastic.
Showing you how to look after it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So even though he disapproved, he still broadly approved.
Looks after the grandson.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, you do it this way.
Correct. Yeah, there's the right way and the wrong way.
That's right, yeah.
Mate, the grandfathers are good like that.
Exactly.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, so we've got a huge motor racing background that wound up just as you got old enough to potentially go and play. Mm-hmm. And then you just had to go and figure out your own way.
Exactly, yep.
So with that car, you've blown it up.
Yep.
What happened then?
I still had the Camry, so it just sort of got put under a cover for quite some time. And it sat for probably 7 months. And then put a little bit of money together. My mum helped me out a bit as well. Back then as a teenager. Oh, it would have been, 20.
Yeah.
And then we got it back on the road and just enjoyed it for quite some time. And then probably another year or so, then an opportunity through Boostcruising came up to straight swap it for a Mk4 Supra.
Yeah.
So forged motor, because I rebuilt the motor as forged again. And these were things that you do in 2006.
Oh, yeah.
Was straight swap an S13 swaps for a Mk4 Supra.
Now, make your head spin.
Yeah. If anyone wants to do that now, I have a Nissan Cube that I would straight swap for a Mk4 Supra again. But, so this guy, it was an NA plus T, and the Supra has always been my ultimate. The Mk4 RZ has always been my ultimate Japanese car. Like that's
the car.
That's always what I've wanted. So I swapped it, and it was an NA plus T, but there was a few things not great with it. So like, it was, one of the turbos was a bit smoky. He had a knocking coil over, and for a guy who still wasn't making tons of money,
they're big problems.
Probably not enough. So I owned that for 3 weeks, and I sold it for $17,000.
Tears. Yeah.
That sort of thing these days, you're probably looking at about 40 grand for that NA plus T setup. Like the genuine RZs are, seeing a couple come down to 50 now, so I'm getting excited. But and normally, your good ones are you're still looking 80 to 100. So did that and sold that, and then that's when I got into the Champagne 180. And that was what I had for sort of 6-7 years.
How did you find that car?
Both my Silvias were through my mechanic at the time, Marty from his business at the time was MW Performance, and he was the go-to guy on the coast for like your import stuff. So he's down in northern New South Wales now. doing other things. But he had a 180 at the time with that he time attacked through like Paul Ruzic and all that sort of stuff. And he had a T78 on that thing. So like just a step down from the T88 old school Highway King it had the potential to make 400 kilowatts through that thing, or thereabouts. Obviously, he dialed it right back and for reliability, but he used to time attack that thing, and it was gorgeous. It was white body 180, stock kit, as in like it wasn't anything special in it in terms of exterior, but it had 18-inch T37s on it in the bronze back in 2006, and that was just his thing. So,
mate, it was gangster.
When he had a 180 come up for sale, and I knew the work that he did, I jumped at it and I took that and took that from there. So that was cool. I was ended up making 350 horsepower out of that thing, which again in sort of 2006, 2007 was quick. Like that thing ran a 12.3 with an average driver like me behind it.
Yeah.
Down the drags, and I did everything in that car. Gymkhanas. I attempted drifting once at a power cruise, where don't tell my work now, but I definitely like rail slid the inside ripple strip of turn 6, and then just sort of turned it around, pulled it in. I was like, no, maybe I'll try that another day, not in front of 3,500 people. But and then drag racing, and I ended up doing through Downshift, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. When we were running events, we did like a circuit thing down at Norwell, and got to like time attack it and stuff around there. So sort of did, and it was a street car at the end of the day. So that was my daily car for 6 or 7 years. Like every day I drove that car. I had nothing else. It was the only car. So daily drove that for years.
And mate, for the OGs in the room, Club High Rollers.
Yep. So Club High Rollers, it started well before me. So, back in the day, they were the elusive nighttime cars that you'd only ever dream to see it, like your auto salons, like your Hunzi started that sort of thing, and your big names like Fat GDR and Easy Win with Nick, who I'm still good friends with today. I just saw Jared Blair out at Jamboree racing. He's got a full drag Supra now, and he had a street one back in the day, and cars like I Bomb You, which was the 1,000 kilowatt from 101 with Varun back then, was all involved in that sort of era of stuff. And you're talking mid-00s, and you're talking, to get into the club, it was, I think for 4 cylinders, it was like 400 or 450 horsepower. 6 cylinders was more, or it might have even just been like 500 in the early days. I forget exactly, because that was a little bit before me, but they accepted me in after I resprayed and did my car, and I helped them organise events and dyno days, and went down to the auto salon and supported the real show car guys and those sort of things who were making the big horsepower stuff. And but like they were the guys that you heard about on the highways back in the mid 2000s, and
M1 300.
Exactly. Like if that was
real,
it for sure they would be the cars of the caliber that you saw out there.
In Mexico, allegedly.
Exactly. And it was back in the day where 1,000 horsepower was the number. Like if you're at Auto Salon watching those dynos, these guys were pouring everything to make 1,000 horsepower. Back when 34 GDRs were $35,000 to buy. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously excessive amounts of money into it to make the big horsepower and stuff. But, Mick with Drag a Supra, the first 1,000 horsepower Supra to hit Australian soil. That was just in awe as young blokes to go and witness that sort of stuff. And so I was involved with High Rollers for a few years to the point where I ended up being co-manager or co-owner, if you want to say it, with Nick, who had the Easy Win 32 GDR, which was just the most spectacularly beautiful 32 GDR, like in this teal green, meticulous engine bay. Like the thing was just gorgeous for a little while. And then just sort of like all the Hoonlaws and stuff came in, and everyone sort of started getting a bit older and just sort of got a bit slower. So the club itself ended up just sort of dissolving in terms of, life gets in the way as so famously does. But as I said, a lot of those guys still good friends with, see them occasionally.
And because Sexbec's having a massive revival, I saw that a few of them were at Jamboree on the weekend.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he was ever in High Rollers. We were certainly friends with like a couple of people, but I forget the guy's name that owns it. But that like Mr. GDR, that thing is just a weapon. And I would need Rory
Yeah.
sitting here next to me to tell me the name of the kit on it because he would know immediately.
He would, yeah. But that was wide body before people wide bodied.
That's right. And it still had the full like show interior, like everything's done. And that thing is just
What is it, the VSKF or something? This again, we
just
can get
massive.
Rory to put some reps on it.
Ooh, yeah.
Sorry,
That's,
savage.
but yeah, I mean, there was a car there that was a magazine, Honda there that was a magazine cover car in 2001 with like Imogen Bailey on the cover as well, and they just come out of the woodworks. Like like Fat GTR, the car still exists. Like it's still there. A lot of these cars do still exist.
Yeah.
They just, have been put in a garage and
Got a cover over them somewhere.
exactly, yeah.
It's so cool to see this stuff coming out because I'm sure you're the same. These were like all the things that I just wished I could do. But again, young and poor.
That's right.
Like, just wasn't going to happen.
That's right. And I mean, back then though, like people would look at those cars and be like, "That's the goal."
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like and I mean, it exists everywhere at all times, but I feel like there was less of a hate back then for people achieving these ridiculous things. Like people would blow a motor trying to hit that 1,000 horsepower number and stuff like that. And be like, "Oh man!" Like, I'm sure. I hope we see this back. Like, it was incredible as people like pushing to do things these days. Some people take it as a competition, but back then they're just building the cars for themselves. And like, if you look at these cars and the people that are building them, like their personalities are in these cars, and people look at them and just be like, well, that's Adam who owns Fat GTR. Like that's his personality. It's big, it's bold, it's epic. Those sort of things. And like people like Nick with Easy Win, like it's a perfectionist thing. So like you see the detail that's into it, and those sort of cars are. People have them as memories now, but hopefully we get to see them one day and sort of relive that.
See more of them come out.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's certainly starting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a revival that's that's actually been really quite joyous to watch, and it's been actually really funny. Something I've really enjoyed is there's that wonderful Facebook group with Sexbeck Memory Lane.
Yeah.
And I see people who are like, "Oh yeah, my boost handle is such and such," and I'm like, "Oh, holy crap, I remember." I wouldn't know your real name,
no,
but
nobody does, right?
I knew your Boostcruising handle.
Give me a forum handle or a number plate, and I'll know who you are. But the amount of times that I've been out somewhere and to let our little secret, like for a period of time, like I was a moderator on Boostcruising as well, through the classified side of things, and like helped those guys out for quite some time. So I was quite heavily involved. And don't get me wrong, like I was a younger Dan, sillier, stupider Dan, but I made a lot of friends through that. But it's wild who knows you, but you won't know them.
Correct.
I mean, James and I were out shooting the Likewise. The Likewise guys make all the gear knobs and stuff like that.
Stuff.
Shooting the 86 when they first had it out at like Port of Brisbane. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, pitch black. We were light painting this car in like, how they had the industrial sheds.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, this shed just rolls up from probably 40 metres away. There's me, James, and the guy from Likewise. And then this guy just like walks out of the shed for 40 metres away. He goes, "Are you Sharpie from Boostcruising?" With no context or introduction. I was just like, who, what?
Maybe?
Who's asking? Maybe. But, those sort of experiences, people come up to you like, "Hey, mate, how you been?" And you see so many faces, especially in my line of work now, that it's, you want to be nice to all of them, have a conversation, but please, if you do come up to me and you're like, "Hey, Sharpie," and I'm like, "Hey, mate, how you going?" I'll always interact with you.
Yeah.
But please don't be offended if I've forgotten your name, because
Absolutely.
I'm useless with it.
But also,
Give me your number plate. I'll remember immediately. Yeah.
Mate, that is it. And that, the club high roller stuff at the time, I was ripping around in a 1989 Alfa Romeo. I had a little red 33.
When it ran, or?
Mate, it ran quite often, but it did teach me, a lot. And I would go to those events, and like old Euro stuff wasn't really a thing back then. JDM scene was very strong, and I was a bit weird with my old Euro thing. And I'd look at, in particular, like the high rollers and that sort of stuff, and the level that those guys built their cars to and presented them. And it was really inspirational stuff, seeing all of that. And I guess for you being around that and seeing all of that, and I also didn't realise that, so you were running events for them as well back then. Because I'm starting to see the picture building here of how it all came together. Because I knew obviously about the Downshift, and we might dive into that next. But you'd started running events for high rollers first.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It would have been not long between all of that being a concurrent timeline. But in terms of helping those guys out, like it was like dyno days with workshops and like the Jamboree displays. So I would go and meet with, Ray Box, who, the guy that started Jamboree, a legend in that world. And, we would win any show and shine that competition is like best club and all that sort of stuff. And our guys would get tons of the like standalone awards and stuff like that. Jamboree and great mutual friend James Payne from Oz Garage did a great thing down at the Ekka, and we had some cars invited to that, and again took it out. Like it's had the big cars on the dyno. Famously, Adam's Godzilla 35 GTR broke a strap on the dyno, and at the through 1,000 horsepower 34 GTR with a sequential. So yeah, it was. That's where I sort of got into like the event side of things. Obviously, living with Matyas, I was helping out. Like he was certainly running. Well, I don't know how much I'm skipping here, but you've obviously spoken to Matyas and Rory throughout this podcast and sort of know the origins of Downshift and things like that. So
I'm interested in the Dan Sharp story of Downshift. How did you get roped in? Was it just that you're living in the same house and they're like, come on, mate?
Before that, I was still living on the Sunshine Coast. Wow. And I think I was still living on the Sunshine Coast when I got into high rollers also. But I went to one at the Aldi on Kessels Road. It was probably my first one when it was still...
That was a good spot back in the day.
What was it called before Downshift again? It was the... what was Justin Fox's? I'm having a huge mental blank here.
JDMST.
JDMST, yeah, when it was still being run on JDMST. So I went down there and there was about 8 cars, and again, all guys off Boostcruising. That's where it was organised. Few of us came down, and a lot of the time, that was probably one of the first times where I met like the Andrew Foys, the Rorys, the Clutch Monkey, and all those sort of guys, just to flip back to the Boostcruising usernames and stuff like that. But I made friends with those guys pretty quick, and again, I went to all their meets and supported like a lot of their meets when I could come down from the Sunshine Coast. But as you mentioned, it was probably when I was in living with Matyas that it really sort of turned
kicked off,
kicked next gear. So I assisted those guys doing all those things. We were running the meets at Rocklea, which were getting massive and to the point where the State Traffic Task Force kept shutting us down for no reason, because like we had at the most memorable one at Rocklea was we had like grunt files there. We had the state member for Parliament, so for the automotive enthusiast party at the time, and like we'd put a big word out. It's like no funny business, like don't stuff around. This is like we want to show how well we can do these things as a community, so that we can get more support from official places. And the cops shut it all down and blocked every entrance and defected all the people. And like no one was even doing anything wrong. So ended up moving from there to Beanley eventually, which it still does represent today. And then I was involved with Matyas and Rory sourcing the Portside location, which we held a few meets at now. And Rory's running the Ultimate International meets down there now, which are just incredible. We'll get to that in a minute. But the biggest one that we did is when Paul Walker passed away. So when Paul Walker passed away, we did a big charity thing. So I sort of led the organisation of that one, which was down at Coomera. Back there we had probably 5,000 odd cars turn up. We blocked that street forward and back for a couple of hours. It was incredible. It's the biggest car meet that I've ever been a part of. And at the time, I would have been bold enough to say probably the biggest one the country's seen in a very long time, to my knowledge.
That'd be hard
in terms of like just a turn-up car meet. And then from there, we went and went up to Portside. Probably about 3,000 cars turned up to there. We raised a whole bunch of money and donated it to charity at the time, like Paul Walker's charity at the time. And so that was probably the peak of that side of things for me. And then we had a whole team sort of involved in that. We did the Cinque, which was like more of a show versus the car meet. Like, because Downshift's whole ethos is, doesn't matter what you drive, everyone starts somewhere, like turn up and be a part of it. The Cinque one was an invite only in terms of the cars on show. So it was the top tier stuff. We had everything from all those big, like your Fat GTRs, your Godzilla, your Wild Euros, your domestic stuff. We had jamboree out there. We had everything, and it was an incredible day. And yeah, so I was helping run the monthly meets. I eventually took those over and led them. And I ran them. Yeah, so I headed that and ran those myself with a team for quite some time, probably a couple of years, until I got sort of so busy with my automotive photography and stuff like that I sort of had to pull back from that. And I moved out from Matyas for a little while after a few years, and I just sort of had to pass the torch, I guess, at that time. Still mates with all of those guys. Still frequently see them. Matyas obviously in Vietnam now, but when he comes over, we catch up. And Rory, I see at most of my events these days, and I go and try and support his when I can. And yeah, so that was sort of my involvement in Downshift in terms of event management side of things. But you know, I have that sort of world and all of those people to thank as well for helping me connect to what comes next. So.
Because this story just keeps getting better. This is my favourite part.
It just evolves.
Yeah.
So and that's sort of like how life is run, basically. Through Downshift, one of the best experiences I've ever had was when the 86 released. Toyota did a thing where a whole bunch of creatives could, blogs and stuff like that, could contribute, and articles and photos and stuff like that of the 86. And whoever won that, or who got chosen, got an 8-day trip to Japan with Toyota Australia. So we had done that. So through World Time Attack and through feature shoots and things like that, Matyas and I and a couple of guys from down in Sydney as well all participated. And then we got selected by Toyota Australia. Huge shout out to Steve at the time, who now works for Infinity over in Japan, and Blake from Toyota Australia, who took us over to Japan. It was me, Matyas, and Matthew Everingham, another legend photographer from Sydney.
The Australian Speedhouse connection.
That's right, yeah, absolutely. And so we went to Japan for 8 days, and that was just another level. So from wake till sleep, automotive stuff, and we didn't even scratch the surface of Japan's
Take me
automotive
through, blow by blow to Japan. Let's do it.
So we... it's a Tokyo Auto Salon time, so that was like that was the grail. So, but around Tokyo Auto Salon, all of the other stuff comes out of the woodwork, right? So the RWB annual meet. So I went to that. We got to meet Tadasan, the engineer behind the 86. We got to go to Area 86, which is like all the concept ones. So like convertible 86 was there. They had like camera mirrors. They had a turbocharged version, which
it's the one we're still waiting for.
Well, not to spoil anyone's dreams, but at the time, and everything changes in time, right?
Always.
But the word was there will never be a turbocharged 86/BRZ. But
Disappoint. But
we've been told many truths in the car.
Mate, I'm hanging for the GR.
Times. So got to do all that. We went to so Tokyo Auto Salon was incredible. Like that place is like no other. We've done the auto salons, and you remember the size of the halls and stuff. Auto Salon Convention Centre.
Pumping.
You would have 6 to 8 convention centres inside the auto mess, like the hall for Tokyo Auto Salon, plus the outside area.
Wow.
We were there on the media day, so before like
before the show, yeah.
and there's still thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So like, as I said, the 86 was the feature of that, but you had the GR like LFAs there, you had like Rocky Auto there, you're talking like Lamborghini Miuras, 2000 GTs. Like on that trip, yeah. I thought I'd never see a 2000 GT in my life. I saw 8 on that trip. And that includes, like, we went to the Tokyo History Museum and stuff like that, but like Auto Salon is just another world. And the media, let's call them, my word for them was the paparazzi.
Yes, I have seen photos of the
Auto Salon specifically.
Media, Auto Salon specific, so, not necessarily focused on the vehicles.
No, that's right. So I was photographing I was by myself, no one looking at this Lexus that was on display. Just taking a couple of cars for the story, photos of the car for the story, and then this promo model came out, And I've never been manhandled by 5'6" men in this way in my life. And like proper just elbows in the ribs to push me out of the way, and cameras pointed at things that definitely weren't her face. And so like it was
spicy,
insane. And I was like, wow. I mean, it was an interesting experience for sure. But like that event as a whole, incredible.
Because that's right up on my bucket list.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Like I can't promote that enough. Like Tokyo Auto Salon has to be on everyone's automotive event bucket list. So Tokyo Auto Salon, Goodwood Festival of Speed, which you've just ticked off. Very, very jealous about that.
Got that one in the bag.
You know, like your Monterey, your Pebble Beach sort of stuff. Like all those sort of things should be on every automotive enthusiast bucket list. And I've still got a few to tick off myself as well. I would love to do Goodwood Festival of Speed. Like that is just...
Can recommend.
Yeah, I'll make that happen. But back to Japan, like we did all that. We went to go and end up at Daikoku was the goal.
Oh,
but
mate.
En route, we heard that it had been shut down on the night, just by our police had closed it down. So we were going to we went to Tatsumi, PA, which is just on the Wang there, car park. But on the way, we just like ran into this like car meet at like this Bayside on Tokyo Bay. Went in there and it was just like a whole bunch of Jap stuff. Like it was like Downshift back here, but like early days Downshift, like the small, probably like 80 cars.
So cool.
Know, cubes on neons and full of Tasha wraps on the side and like 180s and neons, and I love it. Anyway, police turned up, kicked us out, so it made us feel like home. Yeah, and I always made the joke with Matyas, like he's the only man that would fly 14,000 kilometres and have to talk cops out of shutting down a car meet.
He's got the gift.
That's right. But we got moved on from there, went to Tatsumi, PA, and that was for like, Everyday Joe blew my mind. So you may be familiar with the F40 going through the snow with the roof racks and stuff like that.
I am very aware of that.
So that F40 turned up. We saw him skid to leave the car meet. F40 to skid to leave the car meet. And I don't promote this. Please
absolutely
keep your hooliganisms at home if you're attending any of our meets these days. But,
unless you've got an F40.
Yeah, even then, let's just have a chat about it. I'll give you a spot to do it.
Yeah,
but,
in Mexico.
Exactly. So saw that, like there's a Z-Tune GDR there. There was like quad rotor 180, quad rotor FD, full replica like Dom's FD from Tokyo Drift turned up.
So cool.
Just incredible. And, you're overlooking the city and the lights and stuff like that. It's
just magic,
gorgeous.
mate.
Absolute magic. So we did that. We did a little bit of touristy stuff, like to the, robot restaurant, all that sort of stuff. And
beer out of a vending machine was one of my favourite things.
Yeah.
Like, how good's this?
Exactly. But I got to experience, we as a group got to experience one of the most special things that you probably, I don't think you even can anymore, and it certainly wasn't a public thing. But so through to Toyota Australia, who took us over there, we went to TRD in Yokohama. So
special.
We turned up, and there's this very just nondescript corrugated iron warehouse.
As the places are over there.
Absolutely.
It's all just a box on a little sign.
Exactly. And it had like just TRD on the side. Yeah. And we went and did the whole corporate thing first and got to meet everyone and did all that. But then like, all right, let's go to the warehouse.
Ugh.
And you open the door. I took 2 steps in, and in front of me, Toyota 2000 GT, Lexus LFA prototype. And I was already on my floor. I was already floored. Keep turning to the right. Le Mans car, Toyota Formula 1 car, F2 car, GT500 Supra with magnesium T37 center locks, the Castrol Celica rally car,
the goats,
JGTC cars, and then speaking of the goats, my personal, the Tom Supra, in the flesh,
mate,
right there, and that was me done. I could have.
You go, that's it, I'm done. This
That's
life
it.
cannot get any better.
Leave me alone for half an hour.
Yep.
I'll be here by myself.
Yep.
And I'll give it back in almost as good condition.
This is it.
Like it was just, and they let us sit in it. They started it up.
What?
So that was,
yeah.
And like they fired up the, one of the Le Mans cars they fired up, and
Oh,
they fired up the Formula One car as well.
What?
Yeah. So that to me was just
Mate, that's ridiculous.
If that was the only experience in Japan, I would have come back a happy man. Like that is just
That's wild.
huge. So I'm told that those cars have been split up and sent to either collections or owners or different areas. I don't know where or anything these days, but I'm under the impression that space no longer exists. But it's certainly not a public thing. It's just like it's their workshop.
Yeah.
And their development place.
And you got photos of all this too, didn't you? Because
so.
I remember I'm having recollections of much how you were tainted by my most recent trip, as most of my friends were. I remember having the same experience watching you. Yeah, go over there and going, you bastard. I mean, good on you, but you bastard.
Yeah, that was a special day for me.
Yeah.
And like I went to the RWB meet by myself, while Matyas was handling coverage of another event that was running at the same time, and I got to meet the main man,
the man himself, punching a dart and
absolutely
cutting up a Porsche.
Exactly. So I got to do that, and but that was certainly the peak of the trip for me. That was magic,
mate. That is mind blowing stuff.
Yep.
And getting that, it's the joy of being part of the automotive game and getting that peek behind the curtain.
Yep.
That for other people they'd be like, nah, whatever, like a bunch of cars. But for people that are deeply ingrained and just love it, it's so special. Absolutely.
And for someone like myself, and this is a very privileged thing to say with the experiences that we've had, is I get desensitized to a lot of things these days in terms of like the cars that you see and the things that go on, especially working at the racetrack, which we'll get to. But that for me, I wouldn't have missed that for anything. That was a special time for me. These days, for a lot of stuff, like I'll give other people experiences. Supercar owners come out, and I get asked every other day, "Hey mate, do you want to jump in and come for a lap?" And I'd love to, but if you're running an event or whatever, like it just can't happen. But even if it did have the opportunity, it makes me happier to give other people that experience.
Absolutely, and put somebody else in because you've had opportunities. Like it's rare air.
Yeah,
there are fractions of a % of people that get to do these things around the world.
Yep.
And if you've had that door open to you, it's the nicest thing you can do to try and help the next guy or the next person.
Yeah, very much so.
Totally get that. That is a lovely place to find. That is a real zen.
It is. And being able to give those experiences to people is what gives me happiness in everything that I do now. So, be it, we've done a couple of like end of life experiences and stuff for people, and I don't broadcast it, so I won't get into like the specifics of it and stuff like that because it's not what it's about. But it's those sort of things, and also to just remember that feeling as a kid when like a Murcielago would roll up, or even a Gallardo or a 360 Ferrari or something like that, and as a young fella, you'd see that and be like, what is this? Like the excitement that you felt, like we've had that, and I want to give that feeling to people regardless of age.
Who might not have had that opportunity.
Absolutely, to be able to do that in the current. So that's what puts a smile on my face these days.
That's a real gift, and that's a lovely thing that you've found through your own experiences.
Yep.
Because what's funny is I remember, particularly as we were all whippersnappers trying to find our way, I certainly found, and this is just my personal experience, I found the photography world to be a real dog-eat-dog sort of place, particularly in the automotive, where people were sort of fighting to get to places and photograph certain cars and those sorts of things. But what I've noticed is the people that have stayed and are still in it now, there's a camaraderie in it.
Very much so. I think that's probably...
that I struggle to even fathom how beautiful it is.
I would imagine there's a link due to that willingness to be able to collaborate or share or assist others. The people that wanted to keep everything to themselves,
hold it
or
on, gatekeeping and all this sort of stuff.
I don't even know where they are now or what they're doing, but
they're all gone.
Coming up in let's talk automotive photography specifically.
Please. And I'm going to pour myself some of mine. Not as nice as yours.
Go for it. Coming up and speaking to those or using those automotive photographers' inspiration. You know, you've your Easton Changs, your Chris Bennies, your Frederick Slosser. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong if you're listening over there in Europe, mate. But
And Larry Chen.
For motorsport.
the man.
Jason Fong is got to be one of my most
Our boy Jason.
Jason, yeah, he's got to be one of my top tier
Who's
favourite.
proudly represented in
He
the
is.
studio.
I mentioned that when I came in. I saw his 24 for 24 Le Mans stuff, and like in terms of photography, motorsport photography, and his artwork. Huge inspiration.
He's the man. Beautiful.
and
And a beautiful man.
He is a great person to speak to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Always has
Just a
time for
wonderful human.
Yep. Here in Australia, in terms of like the high-end commercial stuff, like your Mitch Hemmings just pushing out like huge stuff. And I mean, you cannot have this conversation without talking about like just Dave
Mate,
Reed.
the Dave Reed. I've been talking to him for months about getting him on here.
Yep.
His schedule is bonkers.
Yep. Yeah, it is. I use him still these days for stuff out at the track and for like collateral and stickers and just shirts and all that sort of stuff these days. Like he's a wonderful man. And but seeing him come up, you know, from the Spit days and to today and still doing what he loves is awesome.
Absolutely. And he does it now with a grace that has, you know, he has aged like these fine scotches that we're enjoying.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed watching him mature as an operator. And I've seen him reach that same place where, you know, he's become, because he was young and feisty like the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still remember him getting cranky at me at Archerfield and I was just a whippersnapper and I was in the way.
Yep.
He was like, get out of the, because he was shooting professionally then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we were all just dreaming
Giving it a go.
of shooting professionally. And he actually needed to get the shot. And I'm like, whoa, settle down, champ. And I didn't realise, but when I saw professional media, particularly back then, it was a lot more push and shove.
It had to be. Yeah.
Whereas I have noticed in more recent years in high-level media, I have noticed it's not quite as angry as it once was. But it was a very brutal
doggy dog back
place.
then.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, those sort of people were the ones you looked up to. And I got the opportunity to shoot for, as I said at the start of this conversation, for fast fours, hot fours when they existed, and getting into those things from reading them, you know, in your teens.
Who got you in? Who were you talking to back then?
Honestly, I think that was Matyas and Chris.
Really?
So they both had features, I believe, in hot fours, fast fours, and sort of gave me the contact at the time. And I had a couple of feature shoots to get done. And I think the first one I ever did was a bloke up in Townsville, mutual friend, who had this Datsun 1600 sedan with a CA in it, but just gorgeous. And I think that one was my first ever feature car.
Funny, CA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so not every shoot's perfect, but it was pretty close.
Oh,
but that was cool. I got to shoot that car on the V8 supercar track up there. We just sort of wandered our way on and got it done. Cool. And so I got to shoot a few things, even the sex spec stuff. Like this lady Erin had this CRX, which I believe still exists today, on the Volt crystals and full snakeskin leather interior.
Wow.
And got like just
which one, the Del Sol or the original CRX?
no, the original CRX. Ooh. Yeah. So I got quite a few features in that. I never got the full cover.
Didn't get a cover?
So I didn't get the full picture, but certainly one of my stories with a picture was on the top right-hand corner of the cover. So I still count it.
So you got
a bit of the cover.
You got 1/10 of the cover.
Yeah.
And look, I've got to share this with you. I wanted a cover. I wanted a cover.
Yep.
I desperately wanted to. Again, you know, looking up to Dave, who used to just pump cover after cover after cover after cover, and like that was the halo for us.
Well, as a car owner, you wanted the magazine feature.
Oh yeah,
like that was if you were building a car,
if you could get a
that's
feature,
the holy grail. And then as a photographer, mate, to get into the magazine,
to get in to shoot for a magazine,
incredible.
You were at the pinnacle. But then the little
to get the cover, the little sprinkle on top. That was the goal.
That means you're one of the best. If you could squeeze that out, I couldn't, unfortunately.
Got to shoot for Volkswagen Australia magazine a few times.
Wow.
Some cool combis and got to shoot this Volkswagen powered speed car. Got to shoot on the track at Archerfield and a full feature shoot for that.
That's weird.
So that was like a throwback for me. That was like a sort of return to Mecca.
Yeah, being there and then going, hang on.
So that was very, very cool. So yeah, did probably a dozen or so. Got probably a dozen or so magazine features under my belt. Hot Fours, Fast Fours, Street. Was it called Queensland
Streetcar?
Yep. Volkswagen Australia magazine. Zoom had a feature because a lot of them shared between the Fast Fours.
Yeah, they
and
did
Zoom stuff,
because they all
and stuff
under Express Publications.
Exactly. So that was really cool. So that's definitely an achievement for me. And then from an automotive photography perspective, from there it moved into, and again, just through networking through the car community and what we're doing, it moved into the supercar realm, which is every automotive photographer's
And that I remember. And mate,
right?
you dominated that. And I recall having a dash of envy at the sheer volume of beautiful cars you used to spend your time with.
I have every photo shoot that I've ever done still on my NAS storage at home. And it's cool to open up and see, because it all starts with the make and model. So it would be like Lamborghini for 40 entries, Ferrari for 30 entries and stuff like that. And that's cool to be able to go back and see in addition to the automotive events and things like that I got to photograph. But so I started with that. First ever supercar I got to drive was a Ferrari F430, Charles Nee's F430 that he had at the time. So Matyas and I went and shot that. And it was funny because we went down there. I took my Magna that I had at the time. Matyas had his S2000. Charles brought out the Ferrari. And he was like, how long sort of roughly will this take? We're like, it was sort of sunset, so we didn't have unlimited time, but, give us an hour or something like that. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to go duck down to the cafe or something and I'll do that. And literally from 8 meters away, without warning, threw the keys to me. So desperation, I caught them happily, caught the keys, but he's like, do you mind if I just take the Magna? And I was like,
Are you sure?
I mean, yeah, that's fine. Sorry.
You don't at least want the
like,
S2000?
Yes. But literally, that's what I said. I was like, are you sure maybe Matyas will probably take the S2000? And that's what he did. He ended up taking the S2000. But
how good's a Magna?
We got to drive there. Yeah.
In all seriousness.
Mate,
Magna, that was my grandfather's car of choice as well.
Yeah. V6.
My cousin still has that bad boy in gold.
Oh, yeah.
Magic.
So that was the first one. So we got to drive that and we photographed it. So that was the first supercar side of things as well.
So that's pretty solid. That's a good start.
That's a good start. And then, as I mentioned, it's all through networking. And again, I've got to thank Matyas for opening the door for me. He took me along to the Curie 25 Supercar Club, which is they don't exist anymore, but at the time it was like you pay X amount of dollars and then you get a bunch of points and you can redeem them for
$25,000 a year, if I recall
something
correctly, because I remember trying to figure out how I could find another $24,600.
So I got to go do those, and that was at the time of the release of the Aventador. So we had the unveiling of that.
Mate, that Aventador in matte black with
that
orange
was the
calipers.
one. I got stuck in that car.
You got stuck in it,
sort of.
Couldn't
So I was like, I'm here. I'm gonna sit in it. And for anyone that hasn't been to an event like this, it's loud music and they got an open bar and the most beautiful women you've ever seen serving champagnes and all those sort of things. And they have a chat and unveiling. They pull back the cover and all that sort of stuff. So once we'd done the job, captured all the photos we needed to get, you get to sort of experience and mingle and network and do your thing. But I was like, I'm going to sit in an Aventador because that was still cool to me back then and should be today.
Mate, that's still cool to me.
That should be still today.
Aventador. Yeah.
So anyway, the full Aventador doors that go up and down. So I opened it up, got in. The passenger was already shut. Closed the door. And I'm sitting there and I had a look around and I, got my experience done. It was time to get out. And the door handle didn't exist to me. And outside still pumping music. It's nighttime in this sort of very mood-lit warehouse.
So
it's tinted. No one can see me in there. No one can hear me knocking on. I spent probably a minute and a half looking for this door handle.
You go, I live here now.
That's what I felt like that's what it was going to come to. But I'd found this bit of plastic, which when you're sitting in $1 million car and you find a loose bit of plastic, you're like, if I pull on this, am I going to damage $1 million car? So anyway, I'm pulling back on this thing and I'm like, please don't snap, please don't snap, please don't snap. and I popped it, and the door popped, and I was like, I'm out. so I was probably in there for 2 or 3 minutes by the end of it. I was like knocking on the door, no one could hear me. But yeah, so anyway.
That was a weird time for doors. If you recall Mk4 12C.
Yes.
And the swipey door handle where it was like you had to swipe your hand. That was a weird time for doors.
We used to have races. A good friend, Jay Gordon, had one. And we used to make jokes about, you see the old horror movies where they're running from the bad guy and they jump into the car and they drop the keys and you pick up the keys and you unlock you fumble and you open the door and you get in and it's like, and it won't start. And I say, if you had a brand new MP4,
mate,
your biggest problem was just trying to swipe open and unlock that car.
The bloody
if you don't know what you're
doing these ones,
you wipe off all the mud from falling over, getting chased by the, so that was, but they're a beautiful car. I think they've,
mate,
maybe an unpopular opinion.
I've seen Mark Hocking he's just picked one up for a client, and they're already future classic material.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. It was the McLaren's return from
nowhere, from total absence.
They had the F1 in terms of road cars back in the day,
in
right?
the 90s.
In the 90s, and that was the last road car they had. They had huge motorsport presence in the interim, but in terms of road cars, nothing.
There was nothing
before.
And like Scotty Robinson, who came on this show, who works here in Brisbane, that was like his project with McLaren in the 90s. Was F1 road car, and then there's this huge void between making, the greatest car the planet had ever seen.
Yeah, well, second
until the
car.
XJ220 came along.
But XJ was first.
Well, mate, XJ just owned it, but I enjoy it. But then nothing until MP4 12C, which was the stupidest name for a car ever, because I still remember going, it's called what?
Yeah, are we still on CDs?
I'm like, is that just it? But that thing was just a weapon. And I remember it being so silent and so fast.
Yep.
And that was something we hadn't seen, was like just pure.
Well, it was probably the start of the supercar turbo technology.
Definitely.
Return, if you want to call it that, from early stuff. But a lot of them are still there, flexing your V8, V10, V12. And this is still V8, but sort of seeing that turbo technology come into things, especially with Formula One heading that direction at the time, was very cool.
Because it was just an assassin.
Absolutely.
And the swoopy lines, it was so futuristic compared to a lot of the other stuff you were seeing at the time.
Well, the full like carbon monocoque where you sit, the cockpit. Yeah, it's like almost a foot step over to get into the car. So it wasn't very modest for certain people getting in and in. It wasn't a graceful experience.
You had to do like the butt drop and then the leg swing.
Exactly. But very, very fortunate to experience those sort of things.
I was going to say, we digress.
So
back to sort of shooting a Curie 25 and getting stuck in an Aventador.
That's right.
That's a great story, by the way.
So I got to do a lot of that supercar stuff, and it sort of then from there stemmed into some dealership work. So we did some stuff with Ferrari Brisbane for a number of years pre-COVID.
I remember
Porsche and a Gold Coast. I ended up partnering with good friend, I don't know if you've met him, maybe Bez from Melbourne, Bez Media, Bez Agency.
I don't know him personally, but I know his work.
So we came together at a very cool time, which was Bullrush Rally.
And that was one of the chapters I was looking forward to opening.
Yeah. So end of 2014, because the first rally was end of 2015. So very end of 2014, I saw a mutual sort of supercar contact friend post just like a thing about it, just like a very nondescript supercar rally was coming up, and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, what's this about?" And he's like, "It's going to be like a Gold Rush type thing, Gumball Rally type deal in Australia, and this is the guy you need to speak to." And he put me in contact with Marco from Bullrush Rally. And I almost want to say the rest is history from there, but that is
mate, that's
awesome.
a story we've also got to, much like going into the TRD warehouse, we've got to go all the way down the rabbit hole with Bullrush, because Bullrush, I think, was just, I used to watch when those trips came around for you blokes each year, I would want to just shut my computer and not see what you're up to, because they were so special.
They are, mate. And so I went down, as I said, end of 2014 and met with Marco and his business partner at the time, Cameron, and had a chat about how we could be involved. And to be honest, and Marco's brought this up in recent years as sort of a funny thing to look back on, but back in 2014, I was still pretty fresh in terms of like the automotive photography. I had a couple of things here and there. I had probably a handful of like hero shots, and that was the ones I showed. And I was like, yeah, look how good I am. I'm incredible at this.
Look at these
I'm shooting all these supercar events. This is an event at all that I definitely didn't get stuck in.
I totally know where the door handle is.
And so we had a meeting over lunch. So they flew up from Sydney for it. Well, they're doing other stuff up here as well, but met up with me, and we got involved. And at the time, we needed a second media person, so I got James Dean on board as well, and then Marco got introduced to Bez from Melbourne in terms of a videography perspective, and that's the media team. So that we're the OGs from the start of Bullrush Rally, from conception. And Marco has built that thing, and now in conjunction with a bloke called Simon, who's very much involved in the partnership of Bullrush Rally, they've built that thing into something mega. So
because they had an F1 box
for the
this
last
year,
2 years, this is the third year.
Because when I saw that, I'm like, whoa, this has gone well beyond.
Absolutely. So
that's amazing.
The first year was Gold Coast to Melbourne. And that was a big trip, and we learned a lot of things in year one. But to have an LFA, Liberty Walk 35 GDR, 458 Specials, Aventadors, Hurricanes, like gold-wrapped Hurricanes, and all that, and to be going to like the raceways like Sydney Motorsport Park and the drags, and then staying at like the finest places, eating these ridiculous meals and the after parties, and but what a really special thing about Bullrush Rally is like it's a full charity raising operation as well. So every year they've raised tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars for a different charity each year. So when you have those sort of people together, it's all well and good to do the fun, the party, the fast cars, that sort of thing. But to be able to give back, and you have a charity auction night, on the last night, and it's really, really cool to see everyone come together. And it's wild because you have people from all different walks coming. You've got like young new money guys, you've got old generational wealth, you've got, from mid-20s to late 60s being a part of it, and everyone collaborates. Like there's really no, you may be familiar with like those high net worth people, you might think that a lot of egos get involved and things like that, but when it comes to like Bullrush Rally and getting those people together, it is really
Mate,
a culmination of that passion.
And the cars, it's the great leveler.
And everyone just wants to go out and have a good time, and it turns into like this huge business networking opportunities. I mean, the business opportunities that I've seen come out of that place.
Oh, I can only imagine. You put people who like the same sort of stuff in the same
Absolutely,
room,
yeah.
odds are they're the same sort of person.
Yeah, absolutely,
and you're like,
right.
boom.
After year one, it evolved. I got the record for the first fine on Bullrush Rally.
Well done.
Well, both of them. I got two. One was going to Bullrush Rally. I was doing just a speed camera on the side of the road. And then on the trip, I was doing rolling shots. James was passenger seat outside of the car, and we were doing a rolling shot with this SLS. And we'd done the rear shot, and we'd sped up to get into front of the car to do the front shot.
No.
Just a highway patrol on the merge, and he like pointed at me and was like, "You," I'm like, "Not the guy that can clearly afford it, just the guy." All right, no worries. So I got the first fine of Bullrush Rally, and only fine because everyone behaves really, really well.
Absolutely, I know that they do just the right thing.
But it's evolved from there. Like we've done things that, like we hired airstrips.
I've seen.
We raced a 488 and a Hurricane against a helicopter. There is a fantastic photo, a sequence of photos of the Hurricane and the helicopter. And you're like, wow, like the Hurricane's keeping up. But if you actually zoom out, the 488's about 8 car lengths in front of both of them.
Oh, wow.
We've done that, and being that it's an airstrip and private stuff, like you can have a bit of fun, create a bit of smoke and stuff like that with the car. So seeing people like, you have sponsors like Michelin be on board, and they
Go, let her rip.
yeah, so like, let's just do it. We'll get some stuff for you at the next round. But so that's very, very cool. One of the funniest things is if you don't ask, the answer's always no. And to be able to achieve a result from what starts out as a joke, we were at a venue just doing some 360 shots of a, I can't remember what car, the Liberty Walk 35 GTO. So we were sitting in the media car just doing some very slow walking pace, like drive around in a 360, get some smooth like video of it. And anyway, the owner of the SLS convertible came up and he's like, oh, can I get a video like that? And just immediately, without thinking, I was like, yeah, but only if you do a burnout. And he's like, yeah, right. And he got one of the other guys to come over and jump in. And next thing you know, we've got these wild videos of this car just doing huge hoops on this private area. And and that's just where the media stems. So like it just shows like what fun you can have and that's the thing.
Mate, if you just ask.
And this year, they're closing down Bathurst.
What?
So we've done the old, like we stayed at the Ridges a couple of years ago for Bathurst, for Bullrush, and you have to drive around it. So that was the first time I've had the opportunity, which is a bit of 60 k's an hour.
60 k an hour, mate. Very gentle. And they get real
it's very policed.
Mate, it is very
policed.
Yeah, because you're not the first person to think about doing a loop around Bathurst.
That's right. And they only shut Bathurst down probably 5 times a year or so for different things, like Bathurst 1000, 6 and 12 hours sort of stuff. And now, Bullrush Rally. So this year, they're actually shutting it down. They're going to have like expert driving instructors, and you're going to be able to
bloody hell
swing a supercar around Bathurst in anger. So that's
mate, I wouldn't be brave enough to do that. I'll be honest with you.
It'll be a very, very cool.
That is a proper. I'd still be dawdling. I'd be holding the 60. I think even if I made on the straights, I'd be alright.
Yeah, Conrad, you give it a little bit, right?
Over the top.
Yeah. That's a lot of concrete either side.
Mate, that's a lot of concrete. And, the fellas, well, again, I keep saying fellas, but the people that know what they're doing, I know how hard they work to push a car over the top of that. Yeah. And so to get to do that on a private track day, like that's just not a thing. That doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Yeah. Like what a coup.
It's incredible what they're able to put together. As you said, we've had F1 suites the last couple of years. So I went down and photographed the Formula One. It was really cool because that's my 3rd Formula One event and my first Formula One race that I've seen. So when I came back from the Philippines in 15 or whenever it was, it would have been like 2013, we happened to have a 10-hour layover in Singapore on F1 weekend. So it was like one of the last years, or very, very close to being like the V10s. And so we caught a train into the city and walked around, and you could hear the best sounding F1s echoing off all the buildings. We got to see, Marina Bay Sands, and just the level of opulence in that sort of place was incredible. Yeah,
Singapore doesn't muck around.
Well, we went to as the Marina Bay Sands, we're downstairs, and there's a jewelry shop at the bottom level, and we're just having a look, and there's like a earrings and necklace combo for like 130 grand or something like that.
Bargain.
Because I was there with Matty, and he was like, "Come have a look at this one." And I went over, and it was like a whole like kit, and I was counting the zeros, like $23 million or something.
What?
Like that. I counted the numbers 3 or 4 times. But the most.
So you weren't getting your Jesus piece there?
No, I wasn't. The one man that could have afforded it, we were standing there looking at it. You know how you've been to an event or in a concert or something like that, and they come out and people are like screaming and yelling, like just pumped, excited. There's a group of people down the other end of Marina Bay Sands. I was just talking about Matyas, and out of nowhere, these people lost their minds. Like, picture the Beatles in their prime in the 60s, like lost their minds.
Yep.
Looked over and Justin Bieber had just walked out of like the first 2013 Justin Bieber had walked out of the balcony.
With the hair, the full helmet,
the whole bit.
The helmet hair.
So I went back to my smoothie and let them enjoy it. But it was very, very cool. That was the first Formula One experience. We got to hear them echoing off the buildings, and then continued the flight back home. Then a couple of years later, again through Downshift, Shell, and this is one of the benefits of being self-employed back in the day, was Shell called us up on Tuesday, or like Thursday, can we fly someone down to Formula One?
Jolly.
And we did a full tech tour of the Formula One garage, got to meet Fernando and Kimi were the drivers back then. So it was the Thursday. full tech tour. We watched like this little documentary they did in collaboration with Shell and Ferrari. Flew back on the Friday. So again, missed a race. So to finally get to go down and see a Formula One race was very, very cool.
Can I share something with you, mate?
Do it.
I have never been to a Formula One race. Still. Despite trying.
Again, I think it should be on any automotive fan's bucket list. We went to Melbourne, and we'll continue to do, you know, the Bullrush experiences and stuff down in Melbourne. But I think as a general punter, like if you're just, you and me paying for our ticket and going down and experiencing it, for the money that you would spend on going to Melbourne, surely Singapore or Japan or, you know, Vietnam would have been an incredible one, but they can that because of COVID. But
Honestly, I'm gunning for Monaco.
well,
I figure if you're going to do it,
it's got to be probably one of the most processional races that you'll see. But in terms of the experience,
well, see,
I think it would have to be maximum.
on my resume now, I've been number 2 mechanic on a Formula One team.
What?
So, well, that was what my trip was.
Oh, at Goodwood, yeah, of course.
So
yeah.
you got to understand, all I did was I would cup the torque wrench
Yep.
and just put pressure on it while they would torque the wheels.
Hold the torch.
Absolutely, that was my job. But I was number 2 mechanic on an F1 team. So I believe that I now have the credentials
Absolutely.
to just stroll into Monaco.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm working towards. I've got this vision in my head because it's a real disappointment to me that I've never, because I've really tried. I've really tried to get to Melbourne, and I've looked at the prices.
You've done like Le Mans and Nürburgring and
Mate,
stuff
I've got
like
my
that.
ticket here from when I was at Le Mans in 2014. Do you know, this is what's ridiculous. This is where our stories are so maddening. I watched the start of 2014 Le Mans from Aston Martin's private box over pit lane.
Mm-hmm.
So I stood there looking out the window, and one of my strongest memories, obviously being a photographer guy, Aston Martin had photographers there with new Hasselblads.
Oh, yeah.
So they're hanging out the pit, over pit lane with their brand new Hasselblads taking photos, and I'm there staring at these blokes going, whoa. Like just another
But just been like, I could do that.
planet. Just another planet, mate. And this is the funny thing, like I've been to all this stuff, but I've still never been to an F1 race.
Have you ever looked at this is a decade ago that I looked. Have you ever opened the FIA document to become accredited?
No. I didn't even think I was in the realm to consider it.
Just out of curiosity bit,
No.
right? And I was like, I opened up the document and it was media accreditation, FIA, back in the day. It was like a 28-page document. And again, I hadn't been in the game long. So again, like you, I was like, no, I don't have the chops for this. So just closed the document, went back to watching it on TV. But
Wow. No,
yeah,
I've never looked at that, but I should, because I always, what's his name, Jamie? Is it, the F1 photographer, that Jamie Price?
One I follows Vladimir Reese, who does it for like Red Bull and stuff like that. He's an absolute weapon.
Mate, some of those, I look at some of their stuff, and what they are producing is just art. Like they need like a GOMA, like a gallery of modern art. We just need a gallery of modern motorsport photography. There's just...
Well, like they have the World Press Photography Awards every year at like Powerhouse. You do that same sort of thing.
That's what it needs. That sort of stuff that is just so beautiful. Because I've got to be honest, I think that there is a slight desensitizing to it because you think back to when Speed Hunters was at its heyday.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was certainly one of my dreams was to end up featured on Speed Hunters.
Yep.
And I didn't.
I got one.
Tell me about that.
It was took a photo. It was just a one photo thing. You remember how they ran the I Am a Speed Hunter campaign?
I do.
So there's a photo with the LFA when it was chrome wrapped out of Mount Cotton, in very early days and on a kit body and a kit lens 55 to 250. I've got this.
Going sideways.
Yep.
I know the photo.
They featured that.
That was a good photo.
Yep.
I remember that photo.
Peaked early.
Fun story. I did tell a Porky Pie. You've refreshed my memory. I also got onto I Am the Speed Hunter because I hashtagged the shit out of that. But do you know the photo I got on? It wasn't even a good photo. This is back when camera phones were still a potato. I took a photo of the back of my camera and I'd taken a photo of Mark Webber at Top Gear Festival.
Oh. Did they run that, attempted to run that twice here?
What's that, Top Gear Festival?
Yeah. Because I got free tickets to that through a competition through someone, and then it got cancelled. I wonder if it was around the time that
Might have been.
I think it was around the time that Jeremy Clarkson had an interaction with one of the catering
And
staff.
when that fell over on itself. It probably was, because I went to the first one. I managed to score media to that. And that was so cool.
Yeah.
Just to see. Because I actually, that was probably the closest I've ever felt to, Rockstar. Because again, shooting F1, like that's, I guess in our game, that's probably the pinnacle. If you were thinking photo.
Yeah.
I couldn't fathom a tier that would be more complex to get into, as you said, per the FIA regs.
Yeah, it'd have to be something like that at Le Mans.
Yeah.
Surely. In terms of motorsport.
Whereas, see, a few of the boys have shot Le Mans.
Okay.
Because I know when I was walking the paddock there, I ran into a few of the boys from Australia that had come over and they'd managed to get themselves in.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe not a 28-page document.
Yeah, maybe not.
But there are also guns, so there's that too.
It's very cool. And I love seeing the 6 degrees of separation that exists, not just in the world, but just it's got to be less in remote and stuff like that.
It's got to be 2.
I got to shoot the Porsche Centre Brisbane were kind enough to give me exclusive access to the 918 when it came over for its media. So when the Holy Trinity was released, 918 Spider. So I got to go in, but that was the same car that Top Gear featured on their Holy Trinity post because it has the same media plate.
That was the car.
That was the car.
Wow.
So we got to shoot that. It was pretty cool.
So
I still haven't seen a P1 in real life. I've seen the LaFerrari and I've sat in the 918, but I haven't even seen a P1 yet. When I was in America, I was like, we're going to drive, because we're in Long Beach, we're going to drive down to Newport McLaren, which is like the McLaren dealership that everyone knows, and surely they'll have one. I went in there and they had a 650S on display and an Mk4. And they're like, oh, you should have come down yesterday. We were just out at California Speedway, 30 minutes away. They had like did they have the 675 back then? The LT had just been released.
That was 2016-ish.
It was 2015 is when I went, late 2015.
Might have come out 2015.
650Ss, P1s, P1 GDRs, all racing at California Speedway the day before. I was like, I missed it by that much.
Damn it.
But so that's still on the bucket list. If anyone has a P1, reach out.
There's
it's
a few
one
in the
that
UK.
I'll still sit in myself. I'm very much aware. I know some owners that have one over there. Some very close friends of mine have one over there.
Just going to jump on a plane,
Jensen
mate.
Button's old one.
There you go.
So one day I'm sure it'll.
That's some
I'm sure
heritage.
it'll happen. Yeah.
Well, if you're going to sit in one, it might as well be Jensen's old car.
That's right. Yeah. But automotive photography has led me to a lot of places.
Oh, mate, how obscene are these conversations? And this is, and I must say, I feel the same when I think about the doors that photography opened, because I quite often found myself in a room that I don't believe I belonged in.
Yep. You feel very out of place at some events or some situations.
Quite often. And you're just there going, oh, I got a job to do, but you're sort of sitting there going, whoa.
But it's refreshing being welcomed into those situations as well.
Always.
Like you feel like an outsider as you walk in, but then as you sort of network or talk to people, like they open it up and that's what opens the next door. And that's how we get to where we are.
Absolutely.
And what we do.
Do a good job and do the right thing by people.
I mean, one of the
Astonishing.
best things of that is like when just pre-COVID, James and I started a passion project called Collections Unveiled. And
This is another wonderful chapter I was looking forward to, because Collections Unveiled is something that I was blown away by.
Yep.
And when I saw yourself and James Dean Photography
That's right, yeah.
is what he still trades under, and this is what's hilarious, this is where these 2 degrees of separation. So James shot my brother Tim's wedding.
Yes.
And Sharpie here actually shot my son Henry's baptism.
That's right, yeah.
So, like, mate, to say that the worlds are small is obscene. So we've then got that family connection. But you blokes got together and I feel like I'm stealing your thunder here because I'm so excited. Tell people that are listening the concept behind Collections Unveiled.
So it started just before COVID, before anyone knew it was coming. So I've always been a big fan of like the Petrolicious videos, especially their audio. If no one's ever listened to Petrolicious Mura or 250 GT, pause this just a moment, keep it open in the tab you're listening to, duck over and have a listen to that because that is some of the best automotive audio that you'll ever hear.
Oh, and see, this is where we need to be able to say, Eli, bring it up. We haven't quite got our technology up to that part. Eli, can you actually hear us on this? Can you join into the conversation? Does your thing work here? Let's see. Nah, we can't hear you. Mate, Eli's offline. He's definitely in the room. But this is what we're looking forward to as we go forward.
That's right.
We're gonna be able to stop these things. The technology will exist where we can listen to this magic.
That's right. And we'll pause it right here to give them a chance to listen.
Okay, hold.
And we're back.
And
so thanks very much for listening to that. But now you understand what we're talking about. And that's what the imagery behind it, and it was very sort of high-end, very visceral audio is what stemmed the imagery side of things of what I wanted to achieve. But the concept behind Collections Unveiled is to allow people to see behind the curtain. So you'll see in any of these features that...
I was just going to say, I can't wait for Collections Unveiled on my Bogan collection. I'm just going to throw that in there. All right, and continue.
So you've got it's the first three that we did were certainly all around supercars. So the first one featured the Senna and the other vehicles surrounding it. So a lot of people would have seen one at a time, the Senna or the 570 GT, the 540 GT at the time, and but what's actually, and this is obviously 3 years ago and it's evolved since then, but that collection was like Senna, 720S, 675 Spider, Porsche, what's the special one? The Carrera.
Oh, Carrera GT.
No.
Oh, more special.
I'll come back to it.
356.
Check it out online. You'll find it. But a whole bunch of like Ducati motorbikes, the BMW HP4, like this whole thing. And what the real focus is the passion behind the collection. So it's about...
So what you're telling me is I still have a chance.
Absolutely.
There's
so
enormous
the
passion behind my collection.
But we've reached out to... Absolutely, Scott. Absolutely.
Even though they're really shit and the whole collection costs less than a CX-5, but enormous passion.
Yeah, so the ones that will be coming up shortly, and I'm going to let out a little secret.
Oh, I like a little secret. Oh.
Collections Unveiled stopped when COVID hit because the whole world did, right? Collections Unveiled has recently been picked up by Talk Cafe. Hopefully that can be, it's not too early to announce that, but Talk Cafe, which is Speed Cafe. This is more the collection supercar enthusiast arm of Speed Cafe. I have just picked that up. So James and I are back on the train.
Which
and
makes,
it's going to be all
fills
featured
my
through that.
heart
So
with joy.
we've reached out to a couple of collection owners that are not necessarily supercars. So we're still in talks. I'm not going to give too much away for what's to
absolutely.
come.
That's
Because it's still got to be locked in. But like in the past, we did the Ferrari collection, which had a 40, a 50 specials. We did a Porsche collection, which had all the GT2s, the GT3s, 964. He had a Weapon Supra that he built with his brother, and he talks about that and sort of what led to that because his brother had passed away, unfortunately. So that's like a keepsake. He had a Porsche 550 Spider, which is the model of car that the original James Dean ended his run in. So we got a photo of James Dean in the 550, sent it to his mum. And
she mildly unimpressed. Hopefully she didn't get the link.
She got the joke.
Oh.
But so that's Collections Unveiled. And the photos look at the collection, but the video explores, it's the owners more often than not speaking about their journey, what got them into it, like the owner of the
why
Ferrari
you like
collection.
those things.
Exactly. So
what drew you to those cars?
well, the owner of the Ferrari is like when he was a kid, they had an exchange student from Italy come over. We bought him like a F40 poster and a Ferrari cap, and he still has the cap. Like it's in the video. Like it's so that's like what kicked off his love for Ferrari as a brand. So being able to explore those things. So you'll never see a Collections Unveiled episode where it's just like a person and like 5 big dick supercars who's just been like, I've got money and I've bought these sick cars. You'll never see that because that's not what it's about. It's about bringing people into a world and being like, this is the collection and this is why it's this collection and this is what led me to have this collection. So as I said, it's not always going to be supercars. A few of the ones that we've reached out to are JDM based, or we've got a motorsport one in the pipeline. So yeah, stay tuned.
Because there's some good little collections kicking around. They're
and you'll never see them, and that's the purpose behind it. We give the opportunity to the owners to remain anonymous or not, or be featured, or be just a voiceover, or be like, actually on camera and stuff like that, because privacy is important.
It is.
Especially in the world of car spotters these days.
It is, and this is something that Rory and I touched on, where I guess you and I have an understanding that people don't necessarily, they might own these things, but most of them won't be younger people, and they're certainly not looking for the e-fame.
No.
With the vehicles that they own.
That's right.
9.5 times out of 10, they'd actually prefer that you don't know who they are.
Yeah, well, the owner of the first collection, and he even says in his feature that what makes them happy is being able to take these cars out for people to be able to experience them. So, sometimes some of these owners allow people to sit in their cars, especially, younger people, your parents' permission, the parents are there, and they love to see the kids excited and to experience that. And that's what instills passion of the next generation. We spoke about that feeling earlier that you, as a kid, you felt when you saw these supercars, and being able to give that feeling back to the next generation coming up, sort of, it's something special to see. So that's what we have that behind it. And
I totally get it. I picked up one of my wife's friends the other day in my Barra swapped EL.
And she would have felt that immediately.
Mate, and what I said, so she's from Townsville, so she really relates.
Yeah.
And I said to her, your bogan Uber has arrived. And I turned up out the front with a massive dose. And what?
I felt that out the front while I was waiting for you to turn up, mate.
Yeah, I gave you a little...
little taste.
Yeah. Little blast of dose as I came past. It gets a really nice flutter, actually. So.
Absolutely. I was out at Jamboree on the weekend, and there was a whole contingent of VLs, and not one dosed.
What?
That was the most disappointing.
Was there? Were they? Please tell me there was a canary yellow.
Yeah, didn't dose.
Didn't dose.
Didn't dose.
What's happening to this world?
I don't know. Something needs to be corrected.
I'm really deeply concerned. What's old, mate? Hectic Habib?
Yes, yeah.
Somebody call Hectic Habib and get that man.
I got him to wish a friend of mine happy birthday once in a dose song once. Yeah. One of my friends, Bez, down in Melbourne, worked alongside him, and
What?
The guy with the mullet down.
Oh, mate, are you telling me we have a line to Hectic Habib here?
2 steps. Yep.
2 steps removed. Oh, my God.
And got him to do a happy birthday for a mate once.
I want to talk 2 hours of VL turbos with this man.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're going to talk off the air. Wow. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit starstruck here. I don't often get starstruck, but if you're not familiar, you can also pause at this moment and look up Hectic Habib Dose VL Turbo, and I would assume that you'll find it.
Yep.
That man does the best. Oh.
I'm not going to attempt. I'll embarrass myself.
No, I can't do it. that wasn't shabby. He won't have a go. Wow, I can't even remember what we were talking about because I've
collections unveiled.
Collections unveiled. Sorry, we ended up at Hectic Habib and Turbo VL dose. So no VLs dosing at Jamboree.
No, none.
Sad.
Not a single one.
Sad. See, everybody got grown up.
Yeah,
Disappoint, mate. You can still dose your VL.
definitely.
That's what the people want.
Absolutely, the people's dose.
All right, we're going to try and bring this thing back on track because we've fallen down the Hectic Habib rabbit hole. That's all I can see now in my hid is I can see him driving his VL and talking to you about it. Oh, I'm overly excited about this. It's quite funny. I met Jensen Button the other day, of all people. I'm more excited about Hectic Habib.
But Jensen Button's never driven a VL turbo.
I'll bet he hasn't, and I'll bet that he hasn't dosed one while doing fat laps in it. So we're still on Collections Unveiled here. And so that's going to live a whole new life. Because do you know what's funny? I've seen all the stills, but I actually didn't realise that there was a video series along with it.
Yeah,
and I've obviously missed the bandwagon here. Do they exist in a single place so that I can throw this in the show notes as well?
It's going to be rebirthed shortly through the Talk Cafe platform.
Correct.
So if you look up Talk Cafe Collections Unveiled on social medias, you'll see different things and links to different things.
Get out of town.
So by the time this airs, that should be hopefully pretty close to up and running.
Well, I hope so because it's going to air pretty fast.
Yeah,
I might have to hold it back for you.
Everything's moving pretty fast.
That's
so
good. Don't want to get you in trouble here.
But yes, there's definitely a video for each one.
Wow.
So
I'm going to go back and watch those. We're going to point to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if you're excited, you can jump in and see something that I think is very special.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Appreciate the support. But yeah, that's going to pick up, and very cool things to come in terms of collections that you may or may not be aware of.
Oh, so excited. As I said, the Scott Nelson collection is open at any time. I will state at this point I have not been reached out to. But, mate, we've got everything from a 1979 XL185, 92 ED Falcon, 94 Goldwing. Like, it's a really pre-2000s
gold mine.
Special time of shit boxes. Anyway, I will stop digressing. Now, collections unveiled, COVID, there's a few things that were happening here where business as a freelance photographer was more complex.
Yes. So I just started year 8 of Sharp Imagery. So that was September of 2020 would have been 8 years. I had like goals set for myself to meet, for the first quarter of 2020, and I hit them mid-February. So 2020 was looking to be a really, really strong year for me and what was opportunity that was coming up. And then someone ate a bat. And so that's sort of put a dampener on that. So I had, high-end dealership contracts. I had everything, but the whole world paused. No one knew what was happening. States were going into lockdown. And a lot of those clients had to pull back. And there's absolutely no hard feelings for me and any of my clients because we didn't know what was coming. So I sort of still managed for a few months from there. And then out of the blue, Neil Lewis from Queensland Raceway popped up on my phone. And I hadn't spoken to Neil in, unless I'd been out at the track, it hadn't pumped into the man in a couple of years. And that was Queensland Raceway were sort of restructuring at the time because of COVID and sort of coming out. It would have been mid-June that he called me. So we would have come out of, the 3 weeks that the government so promised us. And things were sort of starting to evolve with how businesses were operating and things like that. And they needed an event manager out there. And Neil knew of me through, the downshifts and running those events and that sort of thing. Reached out and asked if I'd be interested in a job.
Because you guys would also run the downshift track.
We've done the circuit and coffees when they existed.
Because I attended one of those. I bought a IS250, and what I really wanted to do was skid it. And you guys would do a skid pan and a track morning as well.
That's right, yeah.
And I had the best day ever at the downshift circuit and coffee. Was that?
Yeah, that's what it was called.
Yeah, that was what it was called. I've still got the GoPro video somewhere of me hanging that thing out. Because it turns out the IS250 has you can basically crab walk it sideways because it's got that little dip at the end, so you get the extra bit of turn.
Yeah.
And so even though it was an auto, so you sort of had to scando it a little bit and give it a little. Holy hell, would it go sideways?
Yeah.
And that was at one of those events.
Yeah, well,
so they would have known you.
Yeah.
Through obviously all your other things, but you were running events at QR, which is no small undertaking.
It had been a couple of years since I'd run a QR one, but certainly
had those under your belt.
Yeah, so I had I sort of weighed up what was happening, and because I lost 70% of my business,
absolutely,
it was
mate, everything
massive
just
drop,
stopped,
just turned off. So it was a switch and turn the tap off.
If yours was any much the same, people were like, that deposit I paid you for that job, not only we're not going to do the job, we'd also like the deposit back. And I'm like,
yeah, well, I mean, people like James who were shooting weddings and stuff like that, absolutely had that.
Yeah. And so not only did you not have any money coming in, you were anything you'd had in the kitty, you were giving back.
Yep.
And you're there going, because this was pre-government help or anything. This was just tough shit.
Yep.
It's all over.
So that was the start of my Queensland Raceway journey. So I got employed there as an event manager, and that was back when it was both Queensland Raceway and Lakeside together. And I ran and still do run the majority of the recreational events. So,
so that was what you were employed to do initially, was to
event manager.
So event manager, but that's for everything. That's for
So there's a couple of event managers.
yeah. Talk me through it.
It's myself and at the time when I was employed, Josh, who was the other event manager at the time. He ran like race meetings, bikes, and we share a lot of events as well, like sprints and general practices and a countless array of private hires and things like that. But
you said before it's like 400 events a year or something.
Yeah, so at Queensland Raceway these days, you're looking at over 400 events in a calendar. So people will look at that and be like, there's only 365 days in a year. But when you've got a happy laps in the morning, a general practice and a sprints throughout the day, and then a roll racing at night time, it's 4 events. So
chaos.
It is
That's
a
busy.
really busy place. And it sort of is a testament to where we've taken the racetrack, and especially the last, I want to say, 18 months.
Oh, mate, because QR, and I've said it a few times on this podcast, what has happened there is astonishing.
It's massive.
And I wish I could have been at the GTs on the weekend, but I was away living the dream, which is, awkward timing. That track is now somewhere that I can be proud of.
Everyone can be proud of. So for those listening at home, like Tony Quinn bought Queensland Raceway in November of 2021 and took it from a country shed carport environment to just a place that everyone can be proud to go to. From, it still has the grassroots stuff like drifting.
Totally.
And, your entry level things like roll
and
racing.
It's really welcomed it in too.
Absolutely.
And even making the big drift playpen that you guys have made out the front there, because we've lost Archerfield as well.
That's right.
With drifting
so
there.
When we closed down the short track, which a lot of drifters would be
very familiar with,
enamored with, it was a great place, has been turned into a go-kart track. So we've got like recreational go-karts
so
out
you've
there
got
now.
more.
So we had to find a place for the casual drifter, because for the main track now, Queensland Raceway is really elevated with the events that they present and the driving standards and things like that, especially for the main track. So we needed people who are just starting out and may not be as experienced as others, and somebody to do. So the drift playground was born out the front.
Because we don't want your dirt drops on main track.
Well, yeah. I mean, when
you guys are out there like hand painting the ripple strips and stuff as
absolutely.
well. Like it's
everything's,
it's a monster
there's a lot of
job.
The outside guys there put in work that you wouldn't believe. There's so much respect for those guys. They put, especially when the summer months, hot, long hours.
Oh, mate,
It's huge. Drift playground at the front now, which can be used for a variety of things.
Yeah.
Like every second week, there's a drift event out
and Huge has drift school out there, because I was out
on track drift.
Yeah, when I was out the other day, Chris Frome sent me a message. He's like, dude, you're still out here? I'm like, I'd already gone home. I didn't even realise that.
Yeah. You got a few businesses that do that, on track drift, skid control.
Yeah.
So you can get like your qualification through those guys to go into main track.
Which is amazing. And the stuff that skid control do as well. Like
awesome.
they're great operation.
Yeah. But for me, it's the recreational side of things is where I sort of shine in regards to that. So, we've taken Roll Racing Brisbane to the strengths that you've never seen. Like this year we're averaging 1,000 spectators sold out every single month in terms of entries. Drifting strong on the main track for like morning session. Friday Night Drifters made a return. Next one's in like September, so that's really cool to see come back. We started off this Cruise the Night product, which is like full family-friendly atmosphere, 1,000, 1,100 spectators. So you get your kids' entertainment and get the face painting and jumping castle and trade stands and pay $20 and fill a car full of people and just cruise around the track and sort of experience what it is on the other side of the wall. So that's been incredible. It's super, super busy. Like everyone out there is really, really elevated in what we're delivering. And with Tony's investment into the place, and you've seen all the infrastructure upgrades. Like the corporate suite now has a roof over the top of it now.
When I was there the other week for the Happy Laps thing I did on the Sunday morning,
there's no roof.
Mate, they were installing the roof. The cranes were there.
Yeah.
And they were putting cover over it. And I'm like, this is amazing.
That's all done. So,
because that would have been like ready to roll full GTs, I assume.
Yeah, so we had the Shannon's Trophy Series on weekend just gone. And this weekend we actually have the Shannon's Speed Series. So race meeting. So it's again this weekend with all different categories, and like R8 GT Series will be out there, and all of that. So, but But man, it keeps you busy.
Oh, dude. Your schedule. Now, I know. Do you want some of the poor people stuff?
Out of the crystal
Just a little look, mate. I'd feel bad if you brought a scotch to this and you didn't have some of the house blend, which is some of the cheapest I could find. No, just kidding. Little Dalwhinnie there, little splash. Eli, some here for you too, mate. If you're interested. Just figured it's the right thing to do. Mate, beautiful. With that role, that was at a scale that I guess you're used to, but probably at a level of commercialisation that's a little bit different to what you'd been used to. How did you find going into that role
It's
at
a huge
QR?
learning curve.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. My scotch isn't as nice as yours. Needs a bit of water to knock it down.
I just forgot to wet the palate.
Yeah, of course. That's a very polite way to say that.
It was a huge learning curve when I started out there. One, you've got to learn the products. And coming into the other side of the fence and seeing the safety aspects that go into the event management and risk mitigation, because motorsport's a dangerous activity, no matter what side of it you're on. And there's always an inherent risk that something can go wrong. So everything that you do in your planning needs to be to mitigate that risk while still be giving people a fun environment to enjoy their passion, enjoy their motorsport, and get it off the streets and really be able to give it your all. And there's been a whole bunch of quality of life upgrades out there and safety upgrades, and like Tony's resurfaced like the dipper and around turn 4 and 5. And
you can feel the difference.
You can.
And
absolutely.
turn 1 doesn't go anymore. I know it comes up again over time. But
there has been a new track extension with the switchback circuit, so it takes a 6-corner circuit into an 11-corner circuit if we run that layout. So you can experience that during like sprint bonus laps and stuff like that. And next year it'll be part of the actual series. So there's been huge quality of life and performance and safety sort of upgrades. Full new lighting system like you see on.
Oh, mate, the track at night is unbelievable.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole joint lights up.
One of the big things about Queensland Raceway, and it sort of reflects back to some of the European tracks, is you want to be able to race at night, but you still want it to feel like nighttime. Like if you go to other tracks that have had like millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of like say government support and stuff like that, you're racing at nighttime, but it's like racing in the daytime. It's that lit.
Look, without sounding like a wanker, that's what Yas Marina feels like.
Yeah.
Is like, mate, they flick the lights on and it could be daytime, but then you look away and you're like, oh, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
And it's full.
So you still want it to be nighttime, so you still need working headlights for those nighttime sort of things. But it's certainly an experience and adds a complexity to it that people may not appreciate sitting on the sideline. But
and beautiful for this next edition of photographers coming through.
That's right. Yeah.
Not only can they hit 1 billion ISO on their Sony cameras,
exactly,
to be able to see in the dark in the
nice.
first place. Oh God! Remember when 800 ISO was a stretch?
Yeah.
Then they've also got light.
Mm.
You didn't just have to like 1/5 of a second.
That's right. Yeah,
and try and catch a glowing disc. It's amazing.
Yep.
Like the difference out there. And what's funny is I hadn't been to a lot of stuff at QR because I'd sort of separated myself from racing for quite a few years while my son was young, because it's cars, motorsport, family. Not a great combo because it does take you away during your weekends that become fairly important. But I'm getting to an age where my boy's old enough to come, and I've brought him out to TCR, and I've had him out at a few different things. And then on the weekend he came out with me, and we did the happy lap stuff, because again it's a family friendly.
It is, absolutely.
And I really enjoyed. There were parents there. Like I saw a mum in her like hoodie, and she's like got the unicorn hoodie on and the Ugg boots, and like they're just cruising around, and the kids, little boys and little girls there, just cruising around and having a nice morning.
Yep.
And I think that's a really beautiful way to introduce people.
That's why like the Cruise the Night events are so popular, is because it can just be anyone. And it doesn't matter what sort of car you have. We have a show and shine part of it. But you realistically can jump in Toyota Corolla.
Mate, in anything. There was a bloke in a Navara.
Yeah, yeah.
Like cruising around. And like
next to a twin
Navara
turbo Hurricane
would have to be the least performance vehicle I could think of. And he was just cruising around having a great day.
And that's what it's about.
And that's because I have friends that reach out to me and go, oh, how do you do this? And I'm like, it's easy. You just turn up. But there's a real fear that was instilled because, you go back a generation or so and getting access to a racetrack was very difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas now the fact that you can rock up and for like under $100, you can have a go on track and people going, oh God, aren't you supposed to have a helmet? And I'm like, no. It's speed limited.
Yep.
Our safety briefing went for like half an hour. Like it was comprehensive.
Yep.
And even my boy was there going, what's going on, Dad? And I'm like, he's teaching everybody how to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is the most important part.
And because people see racetrack and they think, well, now I can just unleash. No rules, nothing to think about, which is not the case at all.
Absolutely not.
Especially at happy laps where like you do have kids as young as 4 in a car. You've got no helmets, no safety gear. It's literally just about cruising. Whereas, you turn up to a roll racing, which is still enterable by anyone in a registered car, or street car, but they still, because it's a high speed thing, you still have longs, helmets, so car requirements, that sort of thing.
You got to tick the boxes, but you've made it so much more accessible. I think is the thing, and for anybody that's listening that's thinking about it, this is the joy, is that there is a level of access where you can just come and have a look, because it is daunting. Because I hadn't been on track in probably 3 years. And even just rolling around in my own car, I'm like, whoa. It took me 5 or 10 minutes, and I've been around QR many times. And it took me a little bit just to get a feel for it again. So I remember how daunting it is to go out there for the first time.
Especially as younger drivers and stuff like that, mate. Like,
absolutely.
They just need a bit of reassurance.
Yeah, that it's okay and you can take it easy and you don't have to be a hero. And once you get comfortable, you can give it a little squeeze and see how you go.
Yeah, we don't want people to be heroes and that sort of thing anyway.
You don't. It's not the place for it. The place for it is this magnificent thing that, again, I was very excited to talk to you about, is what you've built in Brisbane roll racing. Because, again, you invited me out to come and have a look. Because, as I'd mentioned, haven't been to a lot of things, bit out of it. And you said, no, come and have a look. And you were kind enough to put my name on the gate. And that was when I realised what a big deal you've become. Because I drove up to the gate and I said, Daniel Sharp. And they're like, oh, yes, of course. From Daniel, yeah, absolutely. Go on through. And I'm like, whoa. when did Sharpie become the big dog at QR? And I didn't realise what you've created at roll racing. Because, mate, I was in awe. Not only did I find an ED Falcon with a V8 in it, and then I was like, this is just the best ever. Mate, there's 2,000 horsepower Hurricane, 1,500 horsepower R35 GDR. I haven't been paying attention for a while. I didn't realise that there were like cars in Brisbane. And obviously a couple of weapons came up from Sydney as well. But there's like 1,000 horsepower is like the baseline now.
It's insane. And I can't take all of the credit for roll racing. Obviously, it started before I got there, like Neil Lewis and Gareth kicked that off years and years ago.
But you've carried the torch.
Yeah, once it got passed to me, I've taken a real pride, especially in that product, to try and elevate it and get people to not only participate, become an experience from a spectator standpoint.
And be excited about it.
And be excited about it. So,
because it's a banging night out. Like
we spoke at the start of this podcast about, when I had the 180, 350 horsepower might have been the end of that era, but it was still pretty quick back then. 12-second car was quick. I would say, educated guess, especially having been out at Jamboree on the weekend and seeing some of these cars run an actual time down the quarter mile, I reckon the top 4 would, in a great run, would be mid to high 7-second street cars. I reckon your top 10 are 8 to very low 9-second street cars.
And that's ridiculous because I checked out, late 2015, and if you could crack 10, so if you could go under 10, if you go 9.9, like you're a gangster.
That's massive.
If you could be kicked out of Willowbank and not welcomed back, that was the goal, was to break 10 seconds. A sub 10-second car was mint, and then in the 8 years I haven't been paying attention, everything just got dialed up
just the technology is, like everything, is just like
mind-blowing.
Tripled. It's, with the introduction of E85 quite some time ago now, you don't have to spend the money on like C16 or Toileen or whatever it is.
You're buying it at the servo up the road. I love that they've got E85
on
there.
track now. We've got actually, sorry, track.
Let's just not pump the other business. I noticed that Queensland Raceway has a new edition where you can now buy your fuel on site. Daniel Sharp, please tell me about this new edition.
Yeah, so we've got race fuels on site now. So 98 proper 85% E85.
Proper 85. So not the dodgy stuff in the tank.
So it'll always be 85%.
The very best.
And then ELF 102 for the race stuff.
There.
So we've got that on site now. Again, just one of the many upgrades that have been.
That'd be good in the Barra.
Yeah.
It'd go, God, what is this?
But like one of the benefits, we talk about the fastest cars at roll racing, and no doubt is some of the most impressive stuff you'll ever see.
Oh, phenomenal.
But the benefit of it is anyone can go.
Yeah.
Like you can take your Falcon. I could take my Nissan Cube out there if I wanted to. But, it's just about because you've got 3 hours of either race your mates or there's a couple of lines, race your mate or race anyone. So you can race your mates. Or if there's someone in the race anyone line, you happen to bump up behind
and then
Mr. 35 or the Ford.
And they can just smoke you.
But I mean, how cool is that? I remember being at Cruiser Power Play back in the day with, and Scotty Hoffman had, was still around today in like a 7-second wagon. Back then he had K20.
I remember the K. In
and
like
it was,
the yellow?
Yeah. So I think, and sorry if I'm getting your times wrong, but I'm sure it was in the 8s. And I had my little 180 and it was the off-street drags at Power Play. And I saw him in the line above me and I was counting back the cars to be like, am I racing this guy? And I said, I think I am. So I just sort of, something's wrong with the car and let one person slip in front of me, but I'd counted wrong and it just put me next to him. And I just got wrecked by this so impressive car. But I think that's one of the coolest things. It's just even if you do line up against these weapons, it's
amazing.
It's epic, and you get to experience sort of the sights and sounds of getting.
Honestly, it is.
Fast lengths put on you.
As someone that got hosed on my little, because they said you're okay to get a little squeeze up to your 120, and from a rolling start, mate, I was getting absolutely pantsed by some of these cars and just laughing at how fast, very stock looking, in particular Ford Falcons.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like just getting walked by them.
Absolutely.
But it was amazing to watch these things. And then I'd catch up to them, an hour later, I'd be like, thumbs up out the window going, that's amazing.
You've got to show the respect, right? Because that's all fun. Everyone's there for the same reasons to have a good time.
Because it's just great fun.
And like we've got commentary out there now. Terry and Wade, who sort of from down at the we've
talking the whole thing
the
up.
Drags, talking the whole thing up is incredible. They interview people and
which is amazing. And and you've got like roaming reporters. But something we do need to tell people is that Crocs are not enclosed shoes on pit lane.
That's right, mate. Yeah.
And I am very proud, and I would like to have it stated on the record here that I am the reason that they now say that out loud. I was at QR again the other day, and they said, and Crocs don't count in pit lane. And I walked over to the bloke and I said, I'm the reason for that rule change, because I was escorted out of pit lane. I said to him, mate, I can even put them in sport mode. I had socks on and everything. But he said, that is not a real pair of shoes. And I went,
it's got to be enclosed.
Fair enough. All right, so no Crocs at the track.
That's right, mate, No Crocs, thongs or slippers.
No Crocs, thongs or slippers. But otherwise, and the other thing I really enjoyed when I went to roll racing is if you're not driving and you are just there as a passenger for the social occasion, up the top of what used to be the commentary box, there's a little bar there as well.
Yeah, so if you're not going out on track.
So you can have a little sherbet.
You can, mate, yeah. So like Queensland Raceway, it's a no alcohol venue because
motorsport is dangerous.
Doesn't mix.
Stupid. You'd never do that.
If you're just a spectator.
Correct. As I said, if you're the passenger,
it's the best seat in the house.
Mate, it is
not a
amazing
passenger
seat.
If you're going on track, you can't. But if you're a spectator.
If you're a passenger to and from the track, let's clarify this. We'll get this out. Amazing spot.
Absolutely.
But it was also the level of social. Because I know at Sydney Motorsport Park, for example, they've got the bar and the thing overlooking, and you go in there and socialise and mingle. And we'd never had something like that here. And that was what I was really blown away by. Because as you and I know, the magic of these events is talking to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's a social atmosphere.
Spaces to talk to people, build the relationship, make the friends. I ran into Dan Russell out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Turns out he does a ton of work on fabrication work on one of the R35s.
Yeah, yep.
That's belting out there. And he tells me that like 80 psi is now like the sort of whoosh that you run, and I'm there going, because I remember, and let's throw back here,
Better not wind it up over 14.
mate. Well, when Mercury were pushing 35 through their 3.2 to break that 1,000, and I'm there going, that's just like, it might as well be 1 billion psi, because it just seemed like so much. And the idea of 80, I'm there going,
It's massive.
what? But I guess we've had billet blocks and all those other sorts of
right,
things
yeah.
come in over the last few years that didn't even exist back then.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the thing, and
The technology has come leaps and bounds. It's been the last 10 to decade
yeah,
is massive.
and this was my whole thing, and I guess even with inviting you on the show was when I came out and I saw what you've done there, and obviously not just you, but the entire Queensland Raceway team, but your invitation for me to come and see roll racing, and then what a spectacle that has become, because events at QR were very much just fans, family, and disappointed partners, is what I most vividly remember from all my years at a racetrack. Whereas what I saw was friends and families and people just having a great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a very different vibe because it's so much more welcoming and such a welcoming space as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the past, one of the benefits of Queensland Raceway that has always been there is that you can see everything from everywhere. All right, it's the one track that doesn't tuck out behind a mountain or anything like that. You can see all of the action. But it used to be just around the ring road, around the hills, or if you were allowed on pit wall, depending on what event it was. But now with the mezzanines in the middle of pit lane and on top of the corporate suite, you got 2- and 3-story things where you can, and now at roll racing the bar, you can see everything right in front of you on that main straight. So to be able to experience that, and from that close proximity, and it sort of immerses you in the experience, and you can't put a price on that. Especially if you bring in like the kids out, and we've got a Father's Day thing on the 3rd of September, which is like a cruising thing again as well. And again, it's just bringing the families back out is what keeps this sort of stuff alive.
And that to me was very important. My dad took me out to V8 supercars. I would have been late teens, early 20s, so we're into the 2000s, but back when V8 supercars was like pretty bogan and like flipping cars and setting them on fire at Bathurst, and not proud days for motorsport in general. And I still remember Dad and I standing next to the fence, and Dad bumped into the bloke next to him, an old mate wanting to go him, like literally wanting to throw hands. And I said, mate, the old boy's, he's 60-something years old. I'm like, just settle down, Chief.
Yeah.
And I have a very vivid memory of that, because that was, to me, sort of the lowest point of motorsport, was seeing, that real knuckle dragger. And I'm sorry if that's how you identify, but like just a real disappointment to have at a motorsport track.
I think you get those sort of people everywhere in life.
I agree.
Right? But one of the great things about the community that we fostered out at Queensland Raceway is they quite often hold each other accountable. So if there is, a tool in the shed, we've made it very clear the standards that we're trying to achieve across all aspects. And I'm not locking down any genre of event or anything like that. But when you see that something's wrong and you call it out for being wrong, you quite often do have the support of the respective community behind you to be like, if we stuff this up, there's nowhere else left to go.
No, there's no coming back. And that's something that I've seen as hooting laws clamped in.
That was a big one.
Yeah, the police sort of identified that if you drive a nice car, you're worse than the person that's never had theirs serviced.
Yeah.
And there has been a big community shift to go, we get it that there are people that do the wrong thing, but broadly speaking, the enthusiast community are very serious about taking it seriously and making sure that we are seen and viewed in the best possible light.
Absolutely. And we have a program with the police now. So started by Senior Constable Andrew Harper, who you may know through the car scene. Started it out at Norwell with like this learner driving program. They do a wonderful program out there, and they wanted to incorporate a nighttime event. So he reached out to me at Queensland Raceway, and through him and Senior Constable Lyndon Anderson from the Yamanto Police, we started off with a learner drive night out at Queensland Raceway. And what that's about is it's about interacting young and learner drivers with emergency services personnel. So, everyone, the road test and getting your license these days is everything that you learn is about passing the test. There's certainly driving instructors out there that do a great job, do the right thing, but so many people still get their license and they're pretty absent to what the procedures are out on the road. So, if you see the flashing lights coming up behind you, it might be daunting for a young driver. And so what they do, it started out with just police for the first one, where what they do is they do a briefing, then they jump in the car with their supervising driver and they go and do some just 80 kilometre an hour laps out there. They send the police cars out and bikes out behind them. They turn the lights and sirens on and drive past you so you get out of the way, and then they'll pull up every single driver and give them an experience of being pulled up. And then at the end of that session, they'll pull them in through like an RBT setup and sort of give them that experience. And then we've had Russell White from Driver Safety Australia does like a chat about them about, driving tips on the road and safety things. That was the first one. And then from that, we had Ambos and Fireys jump on board who were like, we want to be a part of this.
It's amazing.
And it stemmed out, at the last one, we had police, fire, ambulance, transport and main roads. The mayor's deputy mayor came out, and we're talking like superintendents. We're talking like the sergeants of the places. We've got the volunteers that work with the police coming out and running like the mobile office bus. Russell White from Driver Safety Australia. Super Cheap Autos jumped on board and helped out with contributing to that sort of program as well.
It's amazing.
It's massive and it's selling out.
Honestly, I think that is incredible. I miss the days of, your Operation Drag and those sorts of things where there was, I guess, an attempt, and I'm just speaking as a layperson that doesn't really know any better, but trying to give that opportunity to not have that first interaction as something unpleasant, but more as something that, these are people here doing their jobs, helping to keep everything working. Here's how it works and here's how you can do it better.
And everyone's either been involved with or heard of, they sit out the front of the racetrack and
correct.
People, they've seen.
I still worry about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm there driving like a perfectly legal car going, oh God, I wonder if I'll get busted for like empty windscreen washer bottle.
Yeah, so being able to sort of interact and liaise with, and they're good people.
Of course they are.
Right? The emergency services, you can build that relationship and try and foster it to be like, hey, we're running an event where they're coming off the street, they're doing the right thing. Let's focus on how we can educate people, especially with like the Learner Drive Night and stuff like that. And it's been an incredible program. And we're building that relationship with the local police. And, when we do have things where we might need an ambulance out at work or something like that, like they're there so fast. They're always happy to help us and that sort of thing.
Mate, that's wonderful, and that's a credit to, QR and the team there, and to be doing those sorts of things, I think is just so wonderful. Because I must say, I don't know if you've had the chance to drive on the roads in Germany, if you've
I haven't,
driven autobahns and the things in Europe. Something that astonishes me, and I'm sure you could find a YouTube clip of it, is when an emergency services vehicle comes on, everybody knows you just peel to the side. So, if you're on the left side, left hand down, point the car, and they all just go 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and they just all peel off, and they all know that that's what you do. Whereas I watch it here, obviously we're on Ipswich Road, and you'll hear an ambulance in the back of the podcast quite often because they're all roaring up and down the road here. People don't know what to do. Like the sirens come on and it's people of all age and they all go, oh, and they all just freak out. And
well, you see a few comments on the thing being like, imagine needing a night where you need to be told to pull over. It's like, well, the reality is driving on a road, you see people with decades of experience freaking out behind it. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
But it is it's not just about, the the lights and sirens behind you. There's a lot more immersive experience in the briefing and the driver safety talk and just sort of experiencing
getting to
it for the first
know
time.
emergency services people because much like our automotive world, they exist in their own world that is not necessarily open to the rest of us.
Yep.
And what you're doing is you're opening the door to that world to meet those people and see them as humans and not just, the badge or the organisation, and actually just get to know them and talk and laugh.
Very much so, yep.
And share an experience. And I must say that's something that I'd take my son to, because I got more value out of my friends got me an advanced driver training for my 21st birthday. And without a doubt, that's one of the most wonderful things that I ever did.
I've done that as well. It's
amazing. Every single person that operates a vehicle should do a defensive driving course, emergency lane change, all your stuff under duress where the car will slide and slip and all the funny things the first time.
Yep.
I think that's one of the most important things that a person can do, and I can promise you that my boy will be doing that.
And I could absolutely 100% confidently say that I've used that experience on the road to avoid things.
Guaranteed.
It opens up your situational awareness. You know what to do when it's happening. And I mean, we do have the added benefit of being involved in motorsport for quite some time, but it's those little things that I learnt at this course that have set me up for safe driving.
Mate, they've stuck with me. There's one that I still repeat to myself to this day, and I'm a middle-aged man now, but when somebody is tailgating you, and the question that was posed to me was, how do you make sure you have safe braking distance if somebody is tailgating you? And my answer was, I don't know. And it's you increase the amount of room in front of you. Yeah, so you fall back from the car behind, so that if you've got to jump on the picks, you're giving room for them.
Pushed into them. Yeah.
Correct. And I never even, without having those conversations and those experiences, I wouldn't have thought about that until it was too late. Which is why we see all the concertinas on the M1.
And it feels like the simplest of things, then you'd be like, that's just common sense. But like until you have to put it into action, it's like a muscle memory thing. Once you know it, you can implement it and sort of drive to those conditions.
Yeah, but up until that point, and you see it, as I said, see it day in, day out. And the emergency services one is probably one of my favourites at the moment, where people just can't do anything. But that's not even something to laugh about, because if the sirens are on, and quite often it's because there's an ambulance going, like there's somebody having the worst day of their life in the back of that ambulance, and you getting out of the way is pretty important.
That's right, yeah.
To how the rest of their day pans out.
And it's like a 17-year-old driver. We've all been there, right? You think you run the world.
Absolutely.
And, you just got to think that there's a lot to learn in the years of driving. My dad said when I first got my license, and I thought I was a great driver, and he said, you won't be a good driver for at least 10 years. Yeah, as a normal everyday punter. And, when I got 10 years under my belt, that quote is still stuck in with me. I was like, no, I mean, and so I should be. I was definitely a better driver at 27 than I was at 17. So it's just one of those things where experience breeds
so much.
Ability.
And this was something I didn't even realise until I was much older, but I didn't even understand that the male brain in particular doesn't finish developing until 25.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder we make such a mess of ourselves.
Oh, huge.
Because we're still not there yet.
Yeah.
Until
Sometimes
we
I think
hit
it's
that.
still 35.
Mate, I reckon I've only sort of started getting more sensible in my 40s, but I'm simultaneously getting less sensible. So none of that actually makes any sense. Shabby, in terms of where you're going next, so you've got collections unveiled, you've got roll racing, you've got 400 events at QR.
Yep.
Aside from owning an XJ220, which is something I think we really should have touched on, what other master plans exist? What are some of the things that you'd really like to see happen if you sort of throw that arc forward another 10 years?
It's a big one. I spent the last 3 years with the personal goal of getting a house, and this year I ticked that off the list. So that was the big one.
Crikey, need a bigger goal
the
now.
5-year goal, so I need something else. So
yeah.
I think at this point,
XJ220.
exactly. So
under $1 million bucks still.
Just. I mean, that's always been my favourite car. Like that was my supercar on the wall. Yeah, the XJ220. I had a little model of it little Hot Wheels of it when I was little, and I was born in '87, and that thing came out when I was about 4 or 5, 92. Rory, 1992, mate.
Ooh. Rory did
I
get
told
it
him I
wrong
mentioned him on that one.
in a previous episode of this show, and Rory does consider himself the encyclopedia of such things.
Mate, honestly, I don't think I know another man that knows what that guy does about the car scene, industry, enthusiast part, enthusiast sector.
Wild.
Like he's an encyclopedia and a good friend.
He is. And we only razz our friends with this level of abuse, which is why we say fake wheels are the best. Sorry, Rory.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was always like my my pinnacle.
Yeah, so when we interview you for Collections Unveiled, and we go, so Daniel Sharp, why the XJ220?
Yeah, just got sick of the Nissan Cube that I'm driving, and that was the next step up.
That was the next most exciting thing.
But look, that's that'd be an absolute dream, you know, if I was so fortunate to win the lotto or do something like that. But look, honestly, in the next 10 years, I think experiences are what we need to look at. I've had a lot of experiences with the automotive photography side of things back in the day, and now I've achieved the house. I've got sort of that base behind me. So I think still continuing to work hard and achieve all those sort of automotive goals. And, you know, I love what we get to experience out at Queensland Raceway, and I love being able to, in my own time, then also focus on sort of personal projects like the Collections Unveiled and stuff like that outside of Queensland Raceway. And, you know, if those lead to being able to afford me to go and do the bucket list stuff like Goodwood and Pebble Beach and, you know, Formula One overseas and all those sort of things, and that's absolute things that I want to tick off as things progress.
We're going to have to pull out that 28-page
that's
set
right.
of regs
Yeah,
for FIA accreditation.
But I think, like, I think I'd always have a camera in hand, but I think just experiencing those events, because you and I have experienced things from behind the lens countless amounts of times, but being able to interact and be off the job, experiencing it is an entirely different.
And do you know what's funny? You've nailed it, and it's hilarious that you say that. I travelled to Goodwood, so the first time I've ever been to an international event with no camera gear.
Yep.
And I've never been to an event, and particularly like, you know, a big caliber event without working.
Yep.
And, you know, really having to earn my keep. And I still did what I do, but I did it with my phone, because I don't need, like, yes, I can do it slightly better with all the tools.
It's more a memory recollection versus a business.
It was very much so photojournalism is my preferred style.
Yep.
And the documenting what happens as beautifully as possible with what you have available at the time.
Yep.
And that was my stylistic approach to what I was trying to achieve, but not being on the tools. And for the first time ever, and this is a really interesting one to share with you as you have this thought process. I wasn't wearing a media vest, and I no longer looked at the guys in the media vest going, God, I wish I had that access. Because I felt like I'd broken through to another place where I was just there.
You know what's funny is when you're out just out and about, right? And when you have the experience that we've built up over years, and you know your ability creatively, and you find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, if I had my camera right now, and honestly, for the memory keepsake, the phones that we have these days are weapons, and they you can still get the memory side of things sorted.
Mate, they're astonishing.
But I think there's nothing more valuable than experiences at this point in life.
And the camaraderie.
Yes.
To me, it's
being able to share those experiences,
mate,
right?
the sharing the experiences, the friendships, the people, and the fact that, like, my whole Goodwood experience came off the back of this podcast because Ellie came on as a guest.
Yeah.
And Michael, who'd been a previous guest, I was like, oh, I'll put you guys together. And all of this happened because of this little experiment that I'm doing here, talking to my friends. And then next minute at Goodwood, and you're there going, what alternate Biff
How
Tannen
did this happen?
timeline am I living in? It's really weird how, like, the collective skills of, and all the people that we've talked about on this podcast, and, many of which have been on already, and quite a number that I'm talking to as well. Because I ran into James Dean when I came out.
Yeah. Yep.
You were running the Euro Day
Oh, yeah.
at
Yep.
QR, and you had the
Front
Carrera
gate,
GT and some really beautiful things there.
962.
Oh, mate, I took my brother Tim. I took his motorbike out there,
Yeah.
and I had my visor down, and I saw James Dean at the gate, and I still had my visor down, and I just popped the thing. I'm like, oh, look at this dickhead, and he's looking at me going, who's this? And then I flipped the thing up, and he's like, the boys, because he's now rebuilding old cars as well. He's
got
building
a
old
Hilux
Toyotas,
Surf.
and I'm like, you're a gangster. I'm like, that's my kind of car.
Yeah,
We've gone
yeah.
from like wanting 1,000 horsepower cars to like just rebuilding old shitbox Toyotas.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like experiences,
Yeah.
are where it's at. And James has been as much of the car scene as any of us in terms of the
absolutely.
photography and modified cars. And
Well, I
this and
can't
that.
wait to get him on here as well, because
Yeah,
just to come and talk all
But,
the
like,
things.
He's definitely part of the living the dream. world.
Mate,
like
he
that
is
surf
living
is
the
epic.
dream.
In terms of the BCF life.
Yeah.
But that car's gorgeous that he's restoring there to the surf, and I think you'd have a good time talking to James as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because I think, as you said, it's that shared experience and the fact that there's a camaraderie around the people that have stayed in the game. You said a lot of people that come in, flash in the pan, a lot of noise, but the ones that stay, that are still there a decade later, you're not there for the money, you're not there for the glory. You are there because there's no place in the world that you would rather be at that time.
That's right, yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, we've spoken about a lot of experience today, and like Bullrush Rally. There's a lot of stories that you couldn't tell on this podcast,
Guaranteed.
from
And I
everything.
wouldn't even
But,
ask.
But it just comes down to being open to those experiences. And I'll use a line that Marco from Bullrush Rally sort of quotes, is that is if it results in a good story, then the answer should be yes. So,
Can I get an amen?
yeah.
That needs to be on a plaque.
Yeah.
If it results in a good story, the answer should be yes. Ooh. Jesus, Dan, I don't know where else we could go after that. I feel like that's probably a bloody good place to wind this
We've
up.
done it.
Mate, if people want to follow you,
Yep.
how can they follow you around the internet? Where are the best places to find Mr. Daniel Sharp?
Look, I mean, I have the Sharp Imagery socials, but I haven't touched on them because I've been so busy in the last 3 years. I would recommend Talk Cafe Collections Unveiled. That's the full name for the socials, because that is very soon about to fire back up. But I'm just Simply Sharpie is my tags. So it's,
Simply Sharpie.
Simply Sharpie.
So it's at Simply Sharpie?
Yeah, but it's just personal stuff, mate. All you're going to find there is a bit of track motorsport stuff, a couple of cute selfies, and pictures of my cat. But it's worth it, I promise.
Mate, those are some of my favourite things. Mr. Daniel Sharp, thank you for taking the time today, because I rudely had to bump your podcast because I had to go on that junket.
Yes.
And then, I ended up back and, whole schmozzle. But you were very gracious with my rescheduling of your podcast. I appreciate you taking the time, mate. Thank you. It's been wonderful to
It's
share
been my
your
pleasure,
story.
Scott. Thanks very much for having me. Anytime.
Eli, on that note, let's wind this bad boy up.
That's a wrap.